Do you think this officer has detention authority to detain or arrest these women now based off of their conduct? Yes or no? Okay, I think you're wrong.
Wait, what's the crime against the United States that they've committed?
They have no lawful purpose to be in the roadway. They have no lawful purpose to be 6 feet away from a vehicle. These law enforcement officers are out of control. They're using color of law to abuse the American population. Well, then at that point, you're reinforcing the narrative that effectively, like, these people are fucking Nazis that deserve to be shot. There's like an entire slippery slope here.
You think that I'm contributing to a rhetoric that's trying to get cops killed?
Unknowingly, but yeah, probably. You don't think a law enforcement officer could argue that in the performance of my duties, XYZ, ABC, Joe Schmo McGlow ran up on me and elbow checked me while performing my job.
The could they argue thing is f***ing up our entire analysis.
Right, and I'm arguing it. Dude, this is where I'm just going to accuse you. I think you're being a defense attorney for the people who are involved.
I think you're trying to provoke me into getting triggered because you know you're getting mugged. It's fucking patently absurd that you think he elbow checked
you can just walk up and put your hands on cops as long as you're really fucking nice about it.
Because you know you can't stand on the
implication
running
of what you're saying, regardless of whether or not you admit it or not.
Stiff arm. This is just not what we're seeing. Your eyes aren't seeing this. I think that these cops, at a bare minimum, are fucking incompetent. And I think it's ridiculous, Connor, that you would justify any of these shots, let alone the shots as they're backing up, as this dying man is lying prone, his hands outstretched, seconds after continuing to shoot 6 shots is unconscionable. It's disgusting. I want to have a good conversation with you, and I think the best way we can have a conversation is to just start by looking at this 5-minute clip from the New York Times to sort of ground us, if you don't have any objection to that.
No objection, Your Honor.
Okay.
When federal agents shot and killed 37-year-old Alex Pretti in Minneapolis on Saturday, officials said he approached agents with a handgun intending to massacre them.
An individual approached U.S. Border Patrol agents with a 9mm semi-automatic handgun.
This looks like a situation where an individual arrived at this scene to inflict maximum damage on individuals and to kill law enforcement.
But a Times analysis of video footage from...
I would just like to play it, but...
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think we could just agree on this real quick. They're lying "see you next Tuesdays" in reference to the way that they're characterizing this incident, right?
Yeah, that's not what I want to focus on. I want to more focus on this part.
Okay, but I just want to say, like, we can keep watching, but I want to give easy concessions.
Oh, sure.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah. No, they are liars for sure. 100%.
Okay.
The scene and the moments when 2 officers open fire clearly contradict federal government statements. Pretti does not appear to pose a threat to agents. In fact, at several critical junctures, he's outnumbered and under their control. Here are the key moments that reveal what happened. We see Pretti walking about filming a group of protesters who are speaking with a federal agent. He's holding a cell phone in one hand. The other hand is empty. It's just over 30 seconds before the shooting when a protester is pushed to the ground. Pretti steps between her and the agent who'd shoved her, briefly putting his hand on the agent's waist. The agent pepper sprays Pretti's face. We can see Pretti is still holding his phone in one hand, while holding his other hand up to protect himself against the spray. Contrary to statements by federal officials, he's made no threatening movements towards agents. Pretti, who had a firearms permit, carries a gun holstered on his right hip. But he doesn't reach for it, and it appears agents are unaware the gun is even there. He reaches toward the protester, apparently trying to help her up, while agents begin grabbing him from behind. He tries to pull away, and again, he makes no threatening movements towards the agents. But agents pull him backwards and force him to the ground. Then, shots ring out. Now we'll slow things down so each moment is clear. Here is Pretti. Several agents are restraining him, and this is the Border Patrol agent who will shoot him first. This appears to be when agents first notice that Pretti is carrying a firearm and yell that he has a gun. Watching the same moment from a different angle, The agent who first pepper sprayed Pretti beats him several times with the spray canister. We can see that both of Pretti's arms are pinned down by his head. This agent in gray reaches to remove Pretti's weapon from his hip. As this agent unholsters his gun, nudges the agent in gray out of the way, and fires. Let's rewind and focus on the agent who shoots first. Just seconds before he fired, he was facing away from Pretti and focusing on an entirely different situation as he tries to spray a nearby woman with an irritant. The spray appears to malfunction and the agent turns as he adjusts it. That's when someone yells that Pretti has a gun. And around 5 seconds after fully turning his attention toward Pretti, the agent draws his weapon and shoots. His arm visibly recoils at the first shot. The firearm has clearly been removed from the scrum when the first shots are fired toward Pretti at close range. The officer who disarmed Pretti can be seen reacting to the sound of the first shot, looking back toward the skirmish. The shooter was standing behind Pretti and not under direct threat, contradicting statements from Homeland Security officials that he fired defensive shots. He also has a vantage point to see the gun pulled from the scene, but it's unclear if he did, and whether he thought a weapon was still on Pretti. He then fires 3 more shots from behind Pretti, whose arms are down as he appears to brace himself against the pavement. In one hand, he still holds his phone, and in his other, his glasses. The agent in gray who removed Pretti's gun carries it across the street. Pretti is disarmed and falling to the ground. But the agent who first pepper sprayed Pretti and later beat him with a canister also pulls out his gun. From a distance, despite the fact that Pretti is lying motionless on the ground, these 2 agents fire 6 more shots. Neither is under threat.
What the fuck did you just do?
In total, the agents fire 10 shots in 5 seconds. After the shooting, an agent kneeling next to Pretti's body asks where the gun is. Showing that not all of the officers seemed to know the weapon had been removed. Agents appear to begin giving medical aid. About 31 seconds elapsed from the time agents first physically engaged Pretti to the moment the last shot was fired.
Okay, this is what I would like to propose real quick, if you don't mind, and I promise I'll stop being annoying.
No,
afterwards.
I prefer low and slow because I think you and I can both get probably pretty spicy pretty quick.
Okay. I would like you to indulge me. Oh, hang on. Sorry, I did the wrong scene. One sec. I would like you to... Let me just make sure people can see you real quick. And let me just make sure that's right.
Depending on what you ask, I might already have a drawing of what you want me to indulge you in.
I want you to indulge me in asking like probably 7 or 8 questions that are designed to be yes or no questions, but you can tell me if you can't answer them that way. And after that, you can run the conversation. And you can approach
Can I do the inverse?
Which is
I don't even care if you go first. You can go first. But I could probably bear in mind I am tired. I am getting caffeinated. I'm a little fussy.
Mm-hmm.
But if you ask me a series of 7 or 8 yes or no questions, I, to the best of my ability, in good faith, answer them yes or no. And then if I feel like I can't answer yes or no because it's loaded, I'll tell you why.
Okay.
And then if I could do the inverse when you're done,
Yep.
then happily I will do this.
Perfect. Okay. And then we can get into more open dialogue. So my first question is the following. Do you agree that the tests for use of force for an officer is taken from an objectively reasonable perspective from the officer who applies the force's perspective?
Yes.
And so the next questions are just going to be going off of the basis and point of view of the officer that actually used force. There's 2, but we'll just do the initial one, okay? The initial shooter, okay?
Yep.
Was there any good reason for that officer to believe that Alex struck an officer?
Yes.
Was there any good reason for that officer to believe that Pretti brandished a gun?
No.
Do you agree that he did not visually see Pretti reach for a gun?
Yes.
Do you agree that he's in a position such that he is in line of sight of the gun as the officer removes it, regardless of whether or not he perceives it?
Yes.
Do you agree that there's no reason for the officer to believe that this person committed an inherently violent felony?
Okay. Let me expanded answer,
Yeah, sure.
but I can still give you a clear answer. I would have to look at obstructing a law enforcement operation, and I would have to see if it's a misdemeanor or a felony.
Okay.
So depending on that, that would be up to the shooting. That's the only criminal charge that I can think of.
And you don't think that he just to expound that there's no reason that the officer would think that the person like committed a murder, some sort of aggravated assault, some sort of sexual crime.
It would be like simple battery on a law enforcement officer, which effectively like simple battery, for those of you who don't know, at least within the state of Florida, I could touch Pisco with a finger and that would be considered simple battery.
Okay. And so just cleaning up and sort of finishing off. So you agree he did not visually see brandishing the gun, doesn't have a reasonable basis to believe brandishing a gun, did not visually see him reach for a gun, and he did not appear ever, and there's no good reason to believe he fired a gun, correct? That's Pretti.
Correct. I think he predicated his shots fired based off of somebody screaming gun, gun, gun.
Got it. Okay. And therefore, on that basis, you believe it was objectively reasonable under the Fourth Amendment, correct?
Yep.
Okay. Your turn.
Okay. So I'll try not to be a douchebag and I'll try not to ask too many questions.
Sure.
So are ICE and or CBP agents, federal law enforcement agents, vested with detention and arrest power?
Yes.
Okay. Even if it's weak, can a people, so not specifically blasting whistles, because we already read that blasting whistles, yelling, all that kind of stuff is protected by 1A, okay? But can people obstructing an officer from being able to go in a certain direction or obstructing a vehicle from going in a certain direction be contextualized as disrupting a law enforcement operation?
Depends what you mean by some of that.
Okay, that's a sufficient answer because that's a gray area that we're going to have to play with later. So that's a sufficient answer for me. Okay. Once a officer has deemed that the law enforcement operation is being disrupted, we've already established, I think, that they have detention and arrest authority. So if the officer believed that he had detention and arrest authority over the women, and perhaps Pretti, we'll get into that, if he issues those women lawful commands to get out of the street and get onto the sidewalk and they disobey said commands, does he have arrest authority over those women? Provided
he has reasonable suspicion that a crime was committed or as part of his investigation. Contingent on reasonable suspicion.
Okay. And if the women disobey said lawful orders, then isn't that in and of itself something that could be considered like disruptive to the law enforcement operation?
Depends what you mean. We'll get into that. Sure.
Okay, we'll get into it. Okay. Now, if I run in the middle of a law enforcement operation, even if I am completely morally justified in doing so, okay, I'll be specific. If I run into the middle of a law enforcement operation and I try to separate a law enforcement officer from somebody that he is taking action on, even if it's morally justified, can that be construed as a battery on a law enforcement officer if I touch said law enforcement officer in doing so and try to separate the parties?
In my opinion, it depends on the context. Sometimes yes, sometimes no.
Okay. Well, I'm going to tell you that I might press you on that later. Okay. Then in the escalation of force or response to resistance or whatever you want to call it doctrine, are you aware of the differences between like thresholds like passive, active, violent, but non-deadly and violent?
Sorry, what's the frame of reference in the continuum of force?
So yes, it is.
I'm generally aware of those concepts, but there might be some more specific meaning you're referencing that might not be captured by my understanding of it. So tentatively, I think I do, but I don't know.
That's a detail we're going to have to get into, so I can't really phrase an explanation as a question, so I'll just ask you another question. So do we think that it's been established by case law in the past that officers can act off of the perceptions of other law enforcement officers and they themselves do not have to see what's going on?
It depends. So it depends is the answer to that. Yes, there are cases in which the use of force is justified by virtue of something that's being relayed to them. That's part of the TOC.
Okay. All right, then I think we could get into it,
okay.
And however you want to get into it or whatever. I could narrativize, you could narrativize, we could pause each other, we could even use that video as evidence and pause it chronologically and then debate it chronologically. As a matter of fact, I wouldn't mind doing that only because the later violence is predicated on detention and arrest authority chronologically as it unfolds. So if you want to have a different approach that you think is going to be faster, we could do your different approach. If you want to do the video, we could do the video. I don't care.
I would appreciate like an open conversation just initially, and then if we feel like we need to go back to the video, we can definitely do that. I'm not opposed to that at all.
Okay. Then if we could still go chronologically, that would be great.
Well, I want to start with what you want to sort of analyze. Do you want to analyze whether or not this was a use of like an objectively reasonable use of force under, it's like the same thing that we did with Renee Good, right? Like, are you interested in the legal discussion?
I'm interested in both actually, because I think that people would probably be surprised that we probably align morally and maybe even prescriptively, but we're not going to agree legally.
All right. So then why don't we do the throat clearing why don't we give you the space to do the throat clearing moral stuff? Because I think that we might align on it and it might be just easier to get out of the way. So I'll give you the space now if you want to just throat clear your thoughts on the sort of overall ethical situation before we get into the justification issue.
Sure. No, that'd be great.
All right.
So in reference to the First Amendment, I believe I'm a Republican in that I actually believe in a republic. I believe in the rule of the law. I believe in the Constitution of the United States. I think it's a sacrosanct document, relatively sacrosanct document that holds us together socially. And therefore, I want to honor it as much as possible while still giving latitude to the people who defend it with their lives. And so the First Amendment has held that, you have the freedom of religion, you have freedom of speech, you have freedom of conscience, arguably inferred from that. You have the right to peaceably assemble, and you have the right to, there was another one that's relevant, but it's peaceably assemble, freedom of speech, and there was another one that I felt was relevant, but I'm not sure what it is. But anyways, the First Amendment covers 100% in every case law that I've ever seen, filming law enforcement officers in public conducting their duties. There have been states that have legislated against this, and they've been struck down on First Amendment grounds. So are we in alignment on that moral analysis that it is perfectly legal and moral to film law enforcement officers in the conducting of their duties and protest them as well?
That's my belief. I'm not sure if the Supreme Court has squarely held the direct fact pattern of the sort of ICE recording stuff going on there, but things that are close enough. So yeah, and I think that every court, including a court in the District of Minnesota, has held that at a bare minimum, recording in the context of where you're allowed to be is protected by the First Amendment, as well as sort of being in public streets, again, provided that you have authorization to be in a place. It's a traditional public fora, things like that. So yeah, I would agree generally with your outlook, and I would also agree that that's the way things ought to be in a free country.
Okay, so let's do the Second Amendment. So a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. even if this guy didn't have a concealed weapons permit, it would actually not change my calculus in iota. He could have been, as long as he wasn't like a hardened criminal with like, terrorist offenses in the past or whatever. Actually, having a concealed pistol, actually legal or not, I think that as long as he's not a felon, basically, he has the right to keep and bear arms. And so as a result, going into a dangerous situation, regardless of whether or not you perceive the threat as abusive law enforcement or potentially criminals that you might bump into, he had the right to keep and bear arms. And the firearm itself, in isolation, does not warrant a death sentence.
Okay. I think you're going to find agreement with a lot of people on that at least under the current laws, peacefully, within the regulations by the government that have been approved, possessing, not even just wielding or brandishing a weapon, isn't grounds for death. So I think that we agree on that.
Okay. That's probably where we could start, and I don't really need to, caveat much more. I think that what people directionally say is like, oh, well, if you're trying to justify this legally in any sense, then you're sweeping for the Nazi Gestapo Trump administration, and therefore you hate the First Amendment and the Second Amendment. I found that line of criticism frustrating and stupid, but that's okay.
I respect the fact that you're like, I know that this opinion of yours is going to get you a lot of flack, and I respect you for like sticking your guns, at least in that limited respect. I don't think that you're sweeping for Trump or MAGA. I think you're sweeping for cops. But I don't think that that's because you are trying to like institute another, like a Fourth Reich with Trump specifically or anything like that. I just think that you have a very wrong and inaccurate and fucked up view of cop conduct and whether or not, and like the legal thing. So that's where my focus is mostly. And I am,
if we get pissy, if we get pissy and we're like not able to have an adult conversation or whatever, then as a nice little palate cleanser, I wouldn't mind moving into prescriptions, because the abolish ICE thing, you're not going to get me on. The defund ICE thing, you're not going to get me on. However, there's like tactical things and training things that I think you would probably agree with. And then therefore you're not going to walk away from the conversation being like, oh, Conor's a fucking meat-headed piece of shit who just loves murdering innocent people. I could actually give you things that I think are prescriptive that would help.
Okay. All right. Perfect. If we need a palate cleanser, you just give me a timeout. We'll do a palate cleanser. And yeah, let's get into the legal stuff. I think it's like not even close a case for justified use of force here. And I basically think that my initial set of questions to you indicate that really the only ground that any person could even like facially have to justify this is the mere fact that someone said, gun, 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 he has a gun. And then you're qualified as objectively reasonable in those circumstances to use force in that case throughout the entirety of the use of force. That prolongs, as you saw in the video, 10 seconds. And I think that is so absurd as to be essentially a free ticket for cops to use that rationale if it were to be upheld for essentially any situation in which there could be loss of life or any kind of arrest happening. All it would take is someone saying, gun, 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 he has a gun. And Conor would say, justified. And that cannot be objectively reasonable under the circumstances. And when you add in all the totality of circumstances in this case, to me, it is so clear that not only was there not a qualifying threat, not only would a reasonable officer not think that there's a qualifying threat, but the use of force persisted across an unreasonable period of time between two officers that extends into a situation in which he's lying prone, face up, and 6 additional shots have been shot. So I think it's like insane that you have this take. Also, some of your characterization of the facts. He wrestled the cops. He wrestled the cops with his gun. I don't see evidence of that at all. And so I have to question, I think, your conclusion, but also your assessment of the facts.
Let's start there, because I was explaining that to chat beforehand. But so what I'm going to say is 70% of what you said, I feel like is jumping ahead of context that is necessary for TOC. And so we need to back up from the chronology of the women confronting the gentleman in the street. Sure. And then we'll work our way up to the shooting.
Yep.
However, responding specifically to the tweet that everybody hated, which is fine. What happened, in my opinion, is that MAGA said, oh, he's a terrorist. He has a pistol. He has 3 magazines. He was trying to take out as many officers as possible. And they did that lame propaganda. Okay. And so in response, what Josiah said was the gun was legal. This was murder. There's some tweet in there. I could look for it if I want to, but there's effectively that thing. And I disagree with your and Josiah's characterization of this as murder. And I think it makes the situation worse, but that's fine. We can get into that detail later. So the reason why I posted that, thing, the thrust of that tweet is not, oh, Mr. Pretti is a bad guy who deserved his death. That's not what I'm arguing. What I'm arguing is the legality of the pistol actually has no fucking bearing whatsoever.
No, I agree with that.
On what's happening.
I agree with that. People are saying that because of the fucking optics of it. And Conor, you know that. Come on. Like, this is to try, it's also a PR game. And you said it was lame for the individuals of the administration to blatantly lie to our faces in the most disgusting, depraved manner. I think it's totally fair for people to point to the legality of the gun, to talk about the entailments of what someone like your view would do to the Second Amendment for individuals, in that it would trivially make any such encounter where an officer has bad faith or bad motive to just say gun, 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 to justify turning that into a deadly situation. And so I don't think there's anything wrong with, from an optics perspective, from a policy perspective, to say, hey, if we adopted your rule, this guy was a legal gun owner. It would apply more broadly than that. So I agree that it doesn't specifically bear on the use of force justification in this case, because of course he can't know if it's legally owned at the time he's using the force, and we all know that. But I think that what Josiah is saying is relevant to the optics war, which is being waged so disgracefully by the other side, and B, relevant to the policy entailments of your view. And so I don't have any problem with Josiah saying that.
Okay. What I would say is that you guys are ahead of me politically, I suppose, angling this conversation in a political direction. What I would say is, while I discuss politics, I have a higher loyalty, and the loyalty is to the truth as I see it. That's like my
What's the untrue statement by Josiah?
Hold on. So what I think is going on is that you're saying that this tweet by Josiah, that it's murder, is pointing to a deeper hypocrisy with political implications for MAGA, who are saying that he's a terrorist. I'm saying that it's not murder from my perspective, and I'm going to call it out. And what I'm calling out is the fact that the legality of the firearm actually has nothing to do with the scenario. And if I interjected myself, if I interjected myself into any law enforcement operation, I don't give a fuck if it's by Trump. I don't give a fuck if it's by local police. I don't give a fuck if it's by county sheriffs. If I'm a concealed weapon carrier and I interject myself into a law enforcement operation and I'm carrying a pistol, I am substantially increasing the risk for all involved, including myself. So the legality of the pistol has no bearing on what unfolded.
Yeah, so I think it has a bearing on, like I said, the broader policy implications of what you're suggesting, in that if it were the case that your insanely low deadly force standard were found to be objectively reasonable, it would bear on and would chill people's willingness to openly carry. That's how it's relevant to the broader policy discussion, to the extent that Josiah is A, not a lawyer, and B, maybe said something with respect to the murder, the fact that it was couched right next to the conclusion of murder would make it seem perhaps that he's implying that bears on the murder analysis. To the extent that he made that, I think it's a forgivable error, and the statement is still relevant to other aspects of this discussion, including what people have pointed to, namely the chilling effect this might have on gun possession in this country, and the bootlicking mentality of a lot of people who just years ago seemed to be saying that, Everyone should have a gun all the time in public, and it would make everything safer. So that's what he's pointing to, I think. But if he's trying to do it just to say what it bears on the murder analysis, he's wrong about that. But like, who the fuck cares? That's an ancillary point. That's not about the discussion we're having. I don't understand like why.
Okay, well,
that
Twitter
justifies
isn't a
what you
place for
said.
nuance, so
Yeah, but
Twitter is not a place for nuance, so I don't want to loop on.
Okay,
it.
but why does it justify what you said? I don't understand how it bears on what on your view is.
Because if you're saying that the legality has, and by the way, you're inviting a fight very early on, but that's fine.
How am I inviting a fight, Connor? Because of my tone?
Because I'm telling you the intent behind my tweet. I'm telling you that I disagree with Josiah. You want to bear down on it, which is fine, when we have a lot of other shit to get into.
Okay, we can move
That's
on.
fine.
No, we can
No,
move on.
we don't need to. We can do it peacefully. We can do it fiery, but mostly peaceful conversation.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So the reason why I don't like the legality argument, and I think it's stupid as fuck, and it pisses me off. And I understand that you're saying that the underlying intention of Josiah's tweet is different, which is fine. And I understand it. I probably wasn't even thinking about all the MAGA hypocritical see you next Tuesdays who were like braying about the fact that this guy had a pistol with 2 magazines. I probably wasn't even thinking about that. I wasn't thinking about that. Okay. What I saw was Josiah saying this guy had a legally permitted firearm. This was murder. Okay. And so to me, the reason why that is dumb as fuck is because let's just boil down the scenario. I'm a criminal, or I don't have a concealed weapons permit. Let's say I'm a sovereign citizen and I have a pistol in my back pocket. Okay. I don't have a concealed weapons permit and I'm in a state that requires a concealed weapons permit. Identical scenario. I'm killed by the state. The legality of the pistol has no bearing on me because I do believe in the Second Amendment of the United States. Okay. Yeah. We already agree on that.
The Second Amendment doesn't bear on the deadly force usage in the specific case. I'll grant you. What I think is relevant from a Second Amendment perspective and what you have to contend with is the implications of your determination in this case and what it might have for gun rights down the line. Specifically, to wit, okay, if we adopt the Conor rule that this is objectively reasonable, the reply from other people is, wow, this standard is so low that you're going to chill exercise of Second Amendment rights. And I think you have to contend with that. And it's not like I'm making this argument up. Everyone has been talking about it. Everyone's been pointing at the hypocrisy.
Let me contend with this is going to chill Second Amendment rights, okay?
If adopted, if your standard is adopted.
Every concealed weapon carrier I know knows that they're doing an inherently dangerous thing every time they place a firearm on their body because they're reminded by liberals all the time. The mere fact of owning a firearm like triples your chances of suicide and that suicide being successful. It like doubles or quintuples your chance of a family member dying to an accidental gun discharge. It, if you're actually in a use of force scenario, there's so many different scenarios where people can mistake uses of force. It's possible that you could kill someone on accident or on purpose and be incorrect in their intention and therefore go to jail for murder or manslaughter. It's an inherently dangerous proposition to keep a firearm on your person. And so as a result, that culture is already there. And so to say, oh, well, if we state that bearing a firearm and then trying to protest or interrupt a law enforcement operation is something that's going to chill Second Amendment, the exercise of the Second Amendment, fucking good, okay? People should know the risks inherent to carrying a pistol. People should know the risks inherent to carrying a firearm. And if you can't do so responsibly, then fuck off.
Yeah, but that's contingent on your false assumption that this person interfered or otherwise was obstructing federal prerogatives, which he clearly was not.
Which is why we need to back up and do it chronologically.
If it's the case that there were good reason to believe that he were doing that, that's one thing. But would you grant that?
Let's do that.
But let's just take the other view. If it were the case, conditional. If someone thought, as I do, that was fucking stupid, that he wasn't being irresponsible with his gun or irresponsibly interfering with federal operations, you would agree that the criticism would go through in that case, because then it's like, wait, I'm putting myself at risk even when I'm not being reckless.
Okay.
If
But
it's the
let's
case, would
do
you
that.
agree? Okay, all right. So what is the evidence that a reasonable officer, and again, the officer who shot isn't the officer who like pushes the woman. Just to be clear about that.
That doesn't
So
affect my calculus.
in what sense? Well, how would it not?
Why would that affect my calculus?
Because the rule-
the TOC or the evaluation at the time of the you asked me a question, I'm going to answer it. You asked me a question, I'm going to answer it. The TOC is not reliant on the individual officer being in a scrum with a bunch of other people. He is backing up his other fellow officers, which is exactly in his purview. I think we should take this chronologically.
No. I understand that the TOC.
I'm going to say that again in a second.
I understand that the TOC will, it'll be able to include the fact that it's in a scrum and things are confusing. I'm not doubting that. But understand that the rule you're providing is an officer who arrives at a scrum who hasn't necessarily seen this person interrupt a federal function, or at least you haven't established it, that the rule that you're proposing is one that's independent of that. You understand that? That the rule would not necessarily include that situation, because you don't have any good basis to believe that a reasonable officer from his position would have done the kind of predicate acts that you're accusing them of doing, that he would have seen the hand touch the belt, even assuming that were obstructive in that sense. And because you don't know that he had that intent.
Take it chronologically, otherwise we're going to loop. Also, hold on. I need to tell my chat something real quick. Okay. This is a warning to everyone in my chat, okay? Like the stream, share it with your friends, engage with chat, super chats if you got them, memberships if you got them. If you're soy, or if you're a rude see you next Tuesday, or a bitch, I'm going to time you out. The only thing is, it's going to be 300 seconds, so it's not going to be a long time. But if you show up in your soy, I'm going to time you out. You show up in your soy again, I'm going to time you out. You show up in your soy again, I'm banning you. Okay? The only people who have immunity are Oilers and chippers. Okay?
What's a chipper?
People who pay my fucking bills. If you're a regular and you're being a see you next Tuesday, I'm going to kick you. You understand? All right. Anyways, so let's move it chronologically. So do you want to build up the video chronologically, or do you want me to narrativize it and then we can dispute the details as we narrativize it?
Oh, okay. So it sounds like you want to watch the video, right?
I would like to.
Okay.
I
sure.
think it will allow us to contend with details as they occur.
Okay, one moment. So far, these are the females that approach the vehicle. Give us your analysis. Do you know that this is the officer who shot the one who they're talking to?
Yeah, again, irrelevant to my analysis.
Okay. Well, wait, hang on. Why is it irrelevant? Can you just explain that real quick? Why is it irrelevant whether or not this is the officer? If it's going to factor into your self-defense analysis, it needs to be something that the officer would have known. Same thing with the gun thing. You just made that point about the legally operated gun, whether or not he had a permit. They need to be things that the officer knows about. And so why is it irrelevant?
I can give you a brief summary, but I would really appreciate it if we took it chronologically, because effectively what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to put you in the eyes of the officers as the situation unfolds to understand the continuum of force. 100%. Why are you saying you won't follow me down this road?
I will, but is there a reason you can't answer? Like, the use of force is analyzed from the perspective of the particular officer and what he would have known about, correct?
Right. So if you want the TOC, if you want the totality of circumstances, why wouldn't you analyze the information as it becomes aware to the officers involved in the incident?
To the particular officer, correct?
Sure. And if you want to particularize it, we can particularize it when we get to the shooting.
Wait a second. Because what it sounds like what you're saying is what I'm doing is unreasonable. I'm happy to do the analysis that you're talking about, but let's just be clear that I'm not saying sure we'll do it. That's what we have to do, is analyze the information available to the one or two officers actually shooting the guns. That's what the test is.
So I've asked for this like 10 times. Can we do it when we get there?
Okay.
It happened.
And so, for instance,
For instance, what?
sorry, I was muted. I was saying pause it right there.
Oh.
Okay, right here. Now, I think that the initial officer has sand in his vagina. Okay, to be clear, he has sand in his nethers. But we have two females who are in the roadway, who are 6 feet away, 5 feet away from an ICE vehicle. If the ICE vehicle wanted to back up, it would have to do so cognizant of where the females are. The females have no lawful reason to be in the road. They're not in a pedestrian crosswalk. They're in the cop's face. They're yelling at him. They're pointing fingers and all that kind of stuff. Do you think that a officer in good faith could view that as a disruption of his law enforcement duties?
Depends what you mean by disruption. That's what I answered like your question about. So what do you mean by disruption? Do you mean...
Okay, my answer is yes.
Well, what do you mean by disruption?
I mean that if let's say that they're looking for a suspect or something like that, and the suspect is on the other side of the street. If that officer wanted to run across the street in order to engage in a law enforcement operation, those women are in the way. Okay. Not only that, if the vehicle needs to back up because they're at like a 3/4 angle to the rear of the vehicle, and I'm not saying the vehicle needs to back up. Okay. It probably doesn't. Right. But at the same time, if it needed to back up, those women are obstructing the vehicle.
If they needed to back up because of their presence there, they would be in the way of the vehicle. I take obstruction to be an intentional volitional act with a particular purpose in mind. That's what I understand obstruction to be. You use the term disruption. I'm trying to follow your claim. If your claim is, I can imagine scenarios in which they would present a physical obstacle to what ICE is trying to do, I mean, sure, but that would also exist for everyone on the fucking street. I can imagine scenarios where they would present themselves as a physical.
Allowed to be in the street? Are you allowed to be in the street? And it's considered lawful if you're not in a pedestrian cross zone?
Sometimes yes. Agreed. Sometimes yes.
So hold on. Let's skip ahead a little bit, and I would appreciate it if you stopped being the defense attorney and if we just started playing in probabilities. Okay.
Okay.
Do you think that this officer could reasonably? So, for instance, if these ladies are on the side of the road and they're blowing their whistles and saying, "Fuck ICE, eat a dick, you fat pigs, you pieces of shit. I hope you die. You're Nazi Gestapo. I hope you kill yourself. I hope you start your fucking pistol the second you get home."
I don't think that they can apply force to them or detain them at all on those facts alone.
Now, if they're 6 feet away from the vehicle and they're doing the exact same thing, do you think a reasonable officer could argue that this is escalated to the point that they might be obstructing their law enforcement duties?
Not on that fact alone, no.
Okay, not on that fact alone. Can you foresee a reasonable law enforcement officer believing that these two women are obstructing their law enforcement duties? Or at least having sufficient... Hold on, let me phrase it because you're being annoying as fuck already.
Wait, how am I being annoying? I'm telling you...
You're being annoying because you're slowing down the entire conversation and wrapping us around a fucking axle when realistically you could just say yes or no. So yes or no, Pisco. Let me use your favorite tactic. Let me use your favorite tactic. Do you think this officer has detention authority to detain or arrest these women now based off of their conduct? Yes or no? Okay, I think you're wrong.
Wait, what's the crime against the United States that they've committed?
The obstruction of a lawful law enforcement operation, which is something that ICE and CBP can detain for.
Wait a second. How have they done obstruction in that case?
So, if you look up the statute, I can pull it up. I have a fucking bookmark. It's incredibly vague. It's incredibly vague. But they have no lawful purpose to be in the roadway. They have no lawful purpose to be 6 feet away from a vehicle. They're distracting law enforcement officers by the mere fact that they're putting themselves in danger by being in the roadway. And a law enforcement officer's job,
I'm just looking for the crime,
is to protect like life and liberty. So they're already distracting from a law enforcement operation by putting themselves in danger by standing in the middle of a roadway.
So would yelling at them from a safe place?
No, it wouldn't. If they were on the fucking sidewalk, what's the imminent threat of injury or death?
What? No, I thought you said distraction.
Yeah, they're distracting from law enforcement officers conducting their lawful duties.
Someone on the street 6 feet away yelling at them.
That's protected by the First Amendment.
Okay,
that's protected by the First Amendment. Getting in the fucking face of law enforcement officers, screaming at them, and obstructing their path to conduct their duties is not protected by the First Amendment.
Wait a fucking second. So this is them. So describe to me what's happening with this. What is happening in this situation? They're obstructing.
Okay, and by the way, I need to add a caveat already because I'm giving you an incredible amount of latitude. You're giving me 0, which is annoying as fuck.
What latitude am I not giving you?
What's that?
What ladder?
Because you could just say what would be argued in court versus what you specifically believe, and we could move
I
the
don't
fuck
think
on.
that this is a crime. What I'm looking at right there, is that a crime?
It 100% could be argued to be obstructing a lawful law enforcement operation, which gives the officer detention authority.
I don't. Based on what crime? They're talking to an officer in a car.
You think they're just talking to the officer in the car?
That's what we're seeing right now. Maybe there's other footage that shows them doing other stuff.
Okay. I think you're wrapping around an axle, and I don't care. Can we put a pin, can put a pin in this and say, you don't think this is sufficient for detention or ordering these women to disperse? I disagree with you. I think wholeheartedly disagree with you. Do you want me to pull up the federal statute?
Yes.
I'll just pull up the federal statute.
Just give me the citation.
This is actually something that I already mentioned in my chat.
Give me the citation.
I already mentioned in my chat that this is something that if there was a specific meaning of the rules or laws, then all right, hold on. All right.
What's the statute?
Let's pull this up.
18
let me
USC.
mute. Let me mute so I'm not echoing. But yeah, I'm going to pull up a statute. We're going to make sure that we have the same statute. We're going to read it together. Okay. Is it possible that you could just tell me the statute real quick?
So there's one I think that's like 18 U. Let me just make sure. 111 111. This is the one that they tried to use. So it's 18 USC 111. Here, I'll show it to my audience. But that's the citation you can show to yours. It's so just to let you know, it's 18 USC 111. That's the one that they cited in a recent opinion that was analyzing some of the shit. One sec. And so it says, in general, whoever forcibly assaults, resists, opposes, impedes, intimidates, or interferes with any person designated in section 11114 of this title, and then also forcibly assaults or intimidates any person who formerly served as a person, whatever, designated there. And so this statute, which they cited, requires forcibly.
Okay. Well, hold on. Number one, we should probably read that again. But 18 U.S. Code 1502, resistance to an extradition agent. Do we think that ICE is an extradition agent?
No.
Why not?
Because they don't do extradition. I don't have a reason to believe it. Maybe there's case law that says it.
Yeah, let me Google that definition, and then I want to hear your thing again. So let me just Google who is considered an extradition agent in the United States, and then let me hear your statute again. What I'm seeing is that statute most often applies to U.S. Marshals. So I won't use my statute. Let's use your statute. So read me your statute again.
In general, we don't have to do sub 2 because it's sub 1 that's identified here. And I assume for purposes that this would include, I'm going to assume that this includes any employer or officer of the United States. So an ICE agent is an employer or officer of the United States. I'll grant that. Whoever forcibly assaults, resists, opposes, impedes, intimidates, or interferes with any person designated, as we just looked, while engaged in or on account of their particular duties.
No, because clauses are going to matter here.
Yeah.
So you're saying forcibly applies to all of them.
Yeah.
So 18 USC 111. But is it? That is 100% not the way I'm going to be reading that.
Well, I'm just going off of
assaults, resists, opposes, impedes, intimidates, or interferes with any person designated. You're applying forcibly assaults. What's forcible resistance? What's forcible opposition? What's forcibly impeding? What's forcible intimidation? Forcible intimidation doesn't apply to all 7 of the words immediately afterwards. Forcible applies to assault.
Yeah, so I'm just interpreting it the way that a recent
narrowly
district court filing had it in federal court, but I'll find that decision. Just give me 1 second to do that, okay? Minnesota federal courts opinion.
Okay. And to clarify, people are saying, is yelling too loud equals impeding? No. What I would say is that the officer, rightly or wrongly, regardless of whether or not it gets thrown out of court, he's going to say that I am incapable of backing up my vehicle in a way that it might be necessary. I am incapable of pursuing on foot somebody that I need to apprehend because of the proximity of these people. So if these people were on the sidewalk blasting their whistles, nobody would give a fuck. The reason why they're going to argue that it's an impeding is because they're going to say that these people are all up in our shit. You know what I'm saying? It's not that hard to track.
Where's this opinion? And guys, it was recently stayed on other grounds. It was stayed on the scope of it. It was basically on the nature of the TRO, not on the finding of the statutory holding here, that there was no reasonable suspicion for the Fourth Amendment analysis.
Incorrect, Doobie. When you're saying that this cop had sand in his vagina, I agree with you.
Can you entertain them while I find this?
Absolutely. I'll just give them my argumentation.
Yeah.
So if somebody goes, oh, soy, they weren't using this statute in good faith, that actually doesn't change my argument at all. So my argument with Pisco right now that we're trying to nail down is that 18 U.S. Code 111, assaulting, resisting, or impeding certain officers' employees. It says forcibly assaults, resists. Let me read the entire thing. Whoever, so anybody, right? Forcibly assaults. I'm saying that's one clause.
So this
resists, opposes, impedes, or intimidates, or interferes with any person designated in section 1114 of this title while engaged in or on account of the performance of official duties, or blankety blank shall, where the acts in violation of the section constitute one simple assault, be fined under the title or imprisoned not more than 1 year. So what I'm saying is, if this is a statute that we're going under, the reason why I was told while going through training for how to read a statute, because cops aren't very good at reading statutes, right? But at the same time, reading a statute is important because there's case law where you could argue forcible. And so as a result, if you say forcibly resists, forcibly opposes, forcibly impedes, then that's going to change the dynamic, because Pisco is going to say, well, even if you're arguing that they were impeding them, they didn't use force to do so. Therefore, this statute doesn't apply. Whereas if I was in a court case, I would say, no, forcible only applies to assault. It doesn't apply to impede. Therefore, at this point, this officer, because these women are engaged in other crimes I know they're low-level crimes, but they're engaged in other crimes to impede a law enforcement operation, this applies. And therefore, they're subject to detention and arrest. And therefore, the subsequent shove and pepper spray is therefore justified. So, like, not the shove. The shove was kind of hardcore, right? But like the question that Pisco and I are kind of twisting about on is, does this officer, even if he has sand in his vagina, does he have detention authority? And that's what we're arguing about right now.
I found it, just a heads up. So this is from the recent opinion from Tincture, but it's citing binding Eighth Circuit precedent from 2024. So it's not like it's old precedent. This is from the Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals, which, again, is binding in the Eighth Circuit, both on the court, but also on the people who are, following the law in the Eighth Circuit.
Stop titillating me. Give me the answer.
Quote, defendants argue that Ms. Tincture cannot show retaliatory animus because the ICE officers who arrested her had at least a reasonable, if mistaken, belief that there was probable cause to arrest her for a violation of 18 U.S.C. Section 111. The court disagrees. Section 111 makes it a crime to, quote, forcibly assault, resist, impede, intimidate, or interfere with a federal officer engaged in the performance of their official duties. 18 U.S.C. Section 111A sub 1, which is what we're looking at, quote, because forcibly, as used in that statute, necessarily modifies each of the listed verbs that follows it, citing United States v. Davidson, 108 F 4th 706 at 712 from the 8th Circuit 2024, a violation of 111 would require some aspect or threat of force.
Hold on. Read that last half sentence.
Because forcibly, as used in the statute, necessarily modifies each of the listed verbs that follows it, citing United States v. Davidson, a violation of 111 would require some aspect or threat of force.
Okay. So even if we find it unreasonable, because I'm not scared of two women yelling at me and blowing whistles or whatever, Do you think that an officer would be able to write a report such that they would be able to state, oh, well, everybody else was on the sidewalk and these two women walked up to the car.
Wait,
and therefore I was in fear that they were, going to forcibly impede our lawful duties.
Wait, can we?
I think they could get 100, like it could get thrown out, but I 100% think they
sounds like
argue
what
that.
you were just arguing. I provided the statute for you. You said you had it bookmarked. I provided the statute based on memory because I read this shit. I read it correctly. You said that the reason that your opinion still held was because forcibly only applied to assault. I read you the binding Eighth Circuit precedent, or at least the quotation.
And I haven't disagreed with it.
Okay, and so now your point is, well, so are you granting that it would be illegal to, or there would be no reasonable suspicion to stop these women because they haven't done anything that would put them under the ambit of Section 111?
No, and I would cite the last half sentence.
Which is what?
Read it.
A violation of Section 111 would require some aspect or threat of force. What's the aspect or threat of force?
Threat of force.
Yeah.
Right? So the threat of force, and by the way, I don't have sand in my vagina. So once again, I would not be arresting these women, nor would I be trying to stick them with it, okay? But I think you and I both know that what people get stuck with and what people try to phrase in order to justify an arrest is different than what's actually people are going to be held accountable for. Right.
So what I'm saying is that they didn't have legal authority, at least from if this is all we have. I'm not saying there's not another video, but if this is all we have, I don't think that there's any legal authority to detain them. You seem to be saying that there might be.
Correct. Yeah. And not just
Why?
that. I don't find it reasonable, but I think you could articulate it within a police report. So
you can articulate anything in a police report. I could articulate like that aliens stole my mom, but that's not a limiting thing at all.
Hold on. Do you think that when this officer ordered these women out of the roadway, he had the lawful ability to do so?
I'm not sure. Order by threat of.
This is what I don't like.
Yeah.
You're saying I don't know. Do you think the officer believed he had said authority?
I assume that they all think that they have the authority to do whatever they want. So yes.
Come on, man.
You asked me a question about their subjective belief. They subjectively believe they have the authority to push anyone they want to push. And in this case, yeah, they thought that they had the authority to make orders and that doesn't mean that they're right about it. I thought we were examining whether or not they were authorized, not whether or not they thought they were. Do you think that my position is they didn't think that they were authorized? You think I'm telling you, I think they knew what they were doing was illegal?
Okay. So
are you mad at me for some reason?
Would be,
because
my contention would be I'll forward an argument and then hopefully we can move on.
Okay.
My contention would be, rightly or wrongly, they believe that 18 USC 111 applies. And they
wrongly,
think they have
right?
detention authority.
Wrongly, right? Wrongly? Where's
the Eighth Circuit at? Where's the Eighth Circuit in the country?
The Eighth Circuit oversees this. Oversees the District of Minnesota, I believe. Oh my God, if this is wrong. Yeah, it does. Oh my God, you scared me. Eighth Circuit is.
No, I mean that's not necessarily my point. I was trying to see if they had a reputation for being progressive. That's all.
What the fuck? Wait, but that doesn't matter because that's the law. That's binding precedent.
Yeah, it is binding precedent, but at the same time, you would presume that the officers, if they were, they would be briefed on what is forcible threat,
based on whether it's liberal or what. Are you just grasping at stuff? Like what the fuck?
No. This is, dude, you're acting like this is crazy, but Hawaii and California have consistently found like things that are binding precedent that I find to be wholly unconstitutional in reference to firearms. So as a result, like, yeah, depending on the court, they're either going to have a progressive or conservative lens in the reference to the way that they argue statutes. Like, are you going to, in good faith, argue with me right now that the Supreme Court of the United States isn't arguing in a biased manner based off their political perspective? And by the way, my argumentation is not reliant on this at all.
It's not reliant on what the law is, whether or not they have legal authority to stop them?
Okay, you're being okay.
Am I being unfair right now?
I'm going to ask.
Am I being unfair?
Yes or no question.
Am I being wait, Connor?
You're being unfair, and I'm going to ask you.
Can you explain? Yes, I'm happy to do that. How am I being unfair?
I think my yes or no questions are going to answer this pretty definitively. Okay. Do you think that ICE is going to use 18 USC 111 in order to argue that these women were subject to detention or lawful orders to disperse?
Yes, because they've tried it before in Minnesota.
Okay. Do you think that they could slant a police report in order to justify these people's detention and or arrest, and they could even put it up before a judge who will then determine whether or not this was sufficient to meet the guidance, the binding threshold of threat of violence, or whatever your direct quote is?
The answer to that question is either yes or I'm not sure, depending on what you mean by could, and also depending on the factual, and also depending on the factual. If there's other evidence of them doing stuff that would constitute that. I'm just going off of this, so I'm just there could be other stuff that would put them under that. I'm just going off of this. This isn't showing that, and I would be shocked.
Okay, I know how to cut through the bullshit.
Okay.
If those ladies walked up to the vehicle and they were standing in front of the vehicle and they were screaming and yelling and pooping their pants and all that kind of stuff, they're in the front of the vehicle.
Yeah, probably reasonable suspicion. Yeah, probably reasonable suspicion.
Do you think the law enforcement officers have to like sit there and wait because it's not a forcible impeding of their duties?
I think that would be a forcible intimidation. Probably. Yeah.
Okay, then that is sufficient for me to say that this officer is stretching, because he could get into his vehicle and fuck off, right?
Yes.
Okay. So he's not going to, because he's going to argue 18 U.S. Code 111, the same argumentation he would if those women were standing in front of the vehicle. And he's going to put that in front of a judge.
He would be wrong, right?
Use that for detention authority.
But would you think he was wrong, regardless of if they will do that? Would you agree with
them?
He's
being a fucking me? Yeah, I think he's being a fucking pussy. Yeah, absolutely.
So you don't think that they have reasonable suspicion to detain these people just based on this so far?
No, I do.
Based on
what?
No,
I do. Stretching the law and pushing as far as you fucking can is not itself prohibited.
But you would say it's stretching the law, as in not in compliance with it.
Yeah, as in like I think that the court is overly narrow in applying forcible to all of the terms.
Okay, that's just saying you disagree with the Eighth Circuit.
I would argue that in front of a judge.
I know, but you're just saying you disagree with the Eighth Circuit. But they're bound. As they're standing there, they're bound by the Eighth Circuit.
Okay. Do you think that right now there's probably like a dozen cases? I'm actually getting pissed off.
Why are you mad at me? Well, what did I do wrong?
Because we have so much more ground to cover.
I know, but this is your point. You're asking.
And this is not critical to the overall unfolding of the events.
But Connor, it's your point. You were asking me whether or not I agree there's legal authority to detain. I'm not granting that based on this. That's why I'm not granting
it. You're not their lawyer.
I'm not acting as their lawyer. I'm acting as you and I having a conversation.
When I ask you specifically whether or not an officer could detain these people based off of the circumstances, you're saying maybe. And I can't work with that answer. You either got to say yes or no. If you say no, then I disagree with you. If you say yes, then we move on.
Well, I think based on what I've seen, the answer is no. I don't think they have legal authority to arrest them or detain them.
Okay, we disagree. Let's move to the next point.
Okay.
Reveal what happened.
I think at this point, hold on, pause. I think at this point, they either do have the lawful authority to tell these women to disperse, or they're subject to arrest, and or they can operate under that presumption and put it in front of a judge for judgment. And therefore, they do have detention authority. Okay?
Okay,
that's the premise under which I'm operating.
And in your view, what is their conduct so far that rises in your mind? Not what they could argue, not what a judge would find, but in your mind would constitute forcible assault, resistance, impediment, intimidation, or interference, as construed by the Eighth Circuit. I
think impeding and intimidation is, if I was writing the report,
forcibly?
That's how I'd write it.
No. But do you think that that's what these people are doing right now, forcibly intimidating and interfering?
No.
Okay.
But I'm also not a huge pussy.
It feels like you're pissed at me for asking that.
No, well, because what's going to happen is your audience is going to soy out, and they're going to view this as, because Conor thinks he's not a pussy, even though he really is, and he wouldn't use force in order to get these women to disperse. Conor is incorrect in that these officers have detention authority. Therefore, everything that follows is like fruit of the rotten tree. And I don't think that argumentation
I'm not making
is
that
correct
argument. But the Supreme
I know,
Court has held.
I know you're.
The Supreme
I know
Court
you're
has held.
a retarded audience. So yeah.
First of all, don't listen. The audience is what the audience is. But the Supreme Court has held, and I'll grant you this: just because there's an unlawful detention that precipitates a use of deadly force, doesn't mean that the use of force is per se unreasonable. I'm the first to grant that. That I don't even think this is that relevant to the analysis, to be honest with you. It's a side point that people have pointed out, like, what business does this asshole have even like stopping this woman? But I don't think it determines the actual, it's not like the most important point to the use of force analysis. And I'm the first to grant it. I'm just trying to you wanted to go here.
I appreciate you granting that. But when you start fighting me on these details, it starts to feel like you're pushing in that direction. It doesn't matter, man. You said what you needed to say in order to, you did your BDSM aftercare. Okay. You slap me in the face a little bit. You know, you spit in my face a little bit.
I'm just trying to do this.
Pisco, this is a little intense. Can you relax a little bit? Okay. And then you relaxed a little bit. So I appreciate your BDSM aftercare. Let's keep going.
So relaxing was me like throwing you a bone. That was relaxing.
Yeah, relatively speaking, because basically, if some of your R-slurred audience goes, oh, well, you conceded that the Eighth Circuit forcible doesn't apply to all of these things. You also conceded that you wouldn't perceive this as a forcible threat or impeding. Therefore, all of your subsequent argumentation is flawed. What you've done by stating out loud, even if your audience isn't listening to it, because let's face it, 70% in Twitch and YouTube politics are based off of emotion, not off of the words that we're saying. What you said is sufficient for me to move forward, which is effectively that the courts find that even if the initial like stop or whatever is not fully justified, there's still things that can be brought out of the criminal conduct subsequently.
No, and let me just make that. Let me reinforce that point.
You've given me the bone, so your audience, if they soy out, I can tell them to go fuck themselves. That was sufficient for me.
Okay, perfect. And let me just make that point and emphasize it further. Now, there could be some facts, and the court might determine officer created hazard like later on or whatever, but you can't just conclude because there's initial violation of Fourth Amendment or some kind of unlawful seizure that therefore the use of force afterwards is per se unjustified. You actually need to run the analysis. And these circumstances might be relevant for their factual relevance as opposed to the legal aspect that that I think is less strong. But again, that you have to run the analysis on the use of force without just like trying to do a shortcut around it by pointing to this fucking shit. So that's, yeah, Connor's right about that. I just don't think that there's a basis. And there could be also, to leave it all out there, there could be other video that shows them doing shit that would constitute, a forcible resistance or whatever. And I haven't seen it yet. We're just going off of like the second and a half that we have here. So those are all caveats and I'm happy to grant that. I'm being chill. I just don't think you should be like pissed at me for asking these questions and like grounding it out.
No,
I'm trying to help you.
Yeah, it's not you.
Okay. All right. Well, do you want to continue?
Yep.
Reveal what happened. We see Pretti walking about filming a group of protesters who are speaking with a federal agent.
And again, I agree. I think that they're speaking to them. And I don't think so far that we've seen any basis of, this is just my opinion, you can disagree, of rational basis for detention. Now, this person is almost certainly violating a statute of the state of Minnesota, but the authority for the ICE officers relates to crimes against the United States. I'm not aware of any general authority they have to detain for crimes against states, but instead crimes against the United States.
What I saw is that they can detain for local crimes or whatever, but then they have to coordinate with local law enforcement to enforce said crimes.
Oh, maybe they can. I'm just not aware of that. If that authority exists, I'm not aware of it, but perhaps it does.
Holding a cell phone in one hand. The other hand is empty. It's just over 30 seconds before the shooting when a protester is pushed to the ground.
Here, pause.
Yeah, thoughts on that?
Okay, rewind 3 seconds.
Okay.
And let's watch the shove together.
Before the shooting, when a protester is pushed to the ground.
Yep.
Okay. Do law enforcement officers have, like, so for instance, the same way that state attorneys have discretion, law enforcement officers have discretion as well, right?
Yes.
Where they can choose to arrest or they can choose to disperse depending on the level of the crime?
Yes.
Okay. So if we have detention authority, but you can pepper spray somebody or actually, you know what? That was a good idea. I'm going to hold on a second. That's a good idea. Let's do that. Okay. So if you're in reference to the continuum of force, okay, you can pepper spray somebody. You can go hands-on at the lowest level of force, which is passive resistance. Okay. So if this person believed that they could detain this person under 18 USC 111, and they were making a choice between what they could do, they could either pepper spray them or push them out of the roadway and then dip out because the threat is passed, or they can detain them.
When you say could, do you mean legally they're allowed to?
Yes.
I think so long as it's reasonable use of force. So I wouldn't grant that.
Right. And I think that shove was a little brutal, but I still think it would be contextualized as going hands-on, quote unquote, which would still be at the passive resistance level.
Well, I'm just wondering, what is the what would make this reasonable? Like, in virtue of what is this reasonable? What is the goal that he's accomplishing by pushing her this way?
Okay, let me give you the police report then.
No, well, I'm just asking you as Counterpoints.
Yeah. While conducting a lawful operation at the blocks of XYZ ABC,
Pause. Is your stream okay? Is your stream okay?
Oh, did I exit it? Okay, we're back. Okay.
Perfect.
Then
sorry, I didn't want you to lose your Oilers and your Chippers.
That's fine. We've done already very well today.
Nice.
Okay. So let's discuss this then.
Yeah, but I want it from your perspective, not like what would be in an arrest report, what they would say. Like, you as Conor seeing this, what is the lawful aim that is being accomplished that would justify this push?
I'm gonna give you two.
Okay.
I'm gonna give you the way that I think they're gonna write it. I'm gonna give you the way that I think that I'll give you my perspective. Okay. My name's Officer Conor. I work for the, ICE, CBP, whatever. I'm duly sworn and authorized to do XYZ ABC while conducting operations at such and such block. I got sand in my vagina because two shrill 40-year-old white women were yelling at me and calling me a Nazi. And so as a result, I got mad. Knowing that getting mad and I could use legal pretext to beat the fuck out of women, I'm going to go ahead and cite 18 USC.
Why are you memeing, Conor? This is pissing me off. You know they're not going to write a report like that. No. I didn't even want you to do the police report angle. I got mad and they pissed me off. I got sand in my vagina. Come on, I'm being serious with you. This is bullshit, man. What? I'm trying to be serious with you.
No, hold on. You're misunderstanding my intent. My intent is to deride the officer. My intent is not to deride you. I'm criticizing the officer by saying how I would write it if I was me.
Oh, if you were you would say it's unreasonable.
Yeah. Well, I do think it's unreasonable, but I think that reasonability is a flexible concept, right? Obviously, particularly when it comes to law.
Wait, but if you think it's unreasonable, why is it justified?
Because I'm 6'4" and 230 pounds.
No.
No. When
I say reasonable, I mean objectively unreasonable, not to Conor. I mean under the test.
Well, then you're asking me for a different thing. I told you I was going to give you two things. Can I give you two things?
Go give me the two things.
Because I'm trying to. What you're misunderstanding is you think that I'm memeing in order to detract from the conversation.
I didn't understand. I thought you were trying to meme, and if you weren't trying to meme, my apologies.
My meme is to criticize the officer, not criticize our discussion.
Okay.
So if you will allow me,
sure,
I'm criticizing the officer. Okay. Right. But when I'm done criticizing the officer with my meme, I want to go back to the serious write-up because I think the serious write-up is going to be written and I think it's going to be defended. And I think it's going to be successful in its defense. Okay. So I'm going to do the meme, but it is going to be funny. And people who aren't See You Next Tuesdays will enjoy it.
Got it.
Okay. So Officer McFriendly, was at such and such intersection at such and such time on such and such date when I was confronted by two women. Well, hold on. I'm trying to meme. Two women who approached my vehicle. They forcibly, put it in italics, impeded my investigation by placing themselves around the vehicle at approximate distance in case we needed to maneuver to apprehend a different subject. We could not do so with freedom of movement. They entered in the roadway, which was dangerous, not just to themselves, but also to any officer who would want to render aid to prevent them from being hit by oncoming traffic. Okay. As a result of that, knowing that they're in violation of 18 USC. Now I'm doing kind of the steel man instead of the straw man.
Yeah,
so I guess I'll keep going.
go for the steel man then.
So I'll keep going with the steel man. Knowing that these women were putting themselves in danger and also forcibly impeding, lawful operations under 18 USC Code 111, I decided that I was going to force them to disperse, which is my officer's discretion. At that point, I approached said females. I walked over towards them. I gave them lawful orders to disperse. They refused said lawful orders to disperse. And while we approached the roadway, the end of the roadway in the parking area, they still refused to leave the roadway. Once they chose to no longer lead the roadway, I pushed a woman out of the roadway because while the push may have been, a use of force or whatever, use of force to a passive resistance to force, effectively, I needed to communicate to these people that they need to exit the roadway and stop impeding law enforcement operation. Okay, that's where we're at so far. And if I was writing the report, that would be the steel man. Do you want to hear the straw man or do you want to move forward?
What do you want to do? I want to just tear that apart.
Okay, so I would like to do the straw man real quick because I think the straw man is probably going to align with you tearing it apart. Okay. So I, Officer McDouchebag, was doing an ICE operation harassing random Hispanic people in the city of Minnesota, and 2 white Karens walked up to my car and told me that I was a fucking Nazi piece of shit, and I got pissed off. As a result, knowing that I could use 18 USC 111 as a pretext, I approached said women in an attempt to fuck with them in order to get them to stop fucking with me. When they pissed me off, I knew that I could use 18 USC 111 as a pretext, and when I got near to the side of the road, I shoved them and pepper sprayed them because fuck these people for trying to fuck with me.
Yeah, I mean, which of those stories sounds more correct?
Which one of those is actually going to be successfully defended in a court of law?
Well, can you answer mine, and then we can get into why I think they both
Yeah,
failed?
Absolutely. The straw man, the law enforcement officer being pissed off, not liking people challenging his authority, and using 18 USC 111 as a pretext to beat up people who are talking shit to him is 99% more likely.
Okay, beautiful. I couldn't have said it better. Okay, but now let's deal with your contention that even though that's clearly the more grounded story based on what we've seen so far, and again, there could be other video somewhere that would bolster this person's impression. And keeping in mind, once again,
will likely survive scrutiny in a court of law.
Keeping in mind that this,
the steel man, where he says, "Oh, I was just doing my job, and these women intimidated me, and I was in fear of forcible threat because they approached the vehicle and no other protesters did." They're going to be able to soy the fuck out about 18 USC 111, and it's probably going to work.
Okay, but I want to separate very clearly. I almost never want to mention what a court is likely to say again, unless it's informing what your opinion of the law actually is. But now
we're jumping between legal and moral.
No.
Moral, I object with all this shit, but legally, I'm trying to tell the audience what they're going to get away with.
I don't want to have that conversation. I want to have a conversation informed by the law and what your idea of the law is, but I don't want to have a conversation that's like, they'll be able to say this to the judge, they'll be able to say this to the jury, they'll be able to say this or that. Because that, I think, is weasel shit, right? Because I think it avoids you having to answer hard questions. That's why I think that you want that conversation.
Well, I think I've answered every hard question that you've asked so far. But not only that, I think I'll be answering even harder questions as we continue. But the reason why I'm bringing up the legality and what cops are capable of getting away with under the color of law is because there is broad deference to law enforcement that's based off of law. And in order to reduce homicides by law enforcement officers, we're going to have to talk about prescriptions. And some of the prescriptions that Democrats and liberals have suck fucking asshole. And they're based off of stupid, idealistic bullshit. So we'll get there when we get there.
Okay.
But realistically, I gave you the steel man, I gave you the straw man in reference to the police reporting, and we can move to the next 3 seconds.
Okay, wait, no, I want to address this. So, wait, I haven't had a chance to tear into both. I want to tear into all of this. And just a heads up, Conor supports the British in the Boston Massacre by this logic. It's funny you say this, and this is, you shouldn't say this, because the British literally were defended by John Adams, and at least some of them got away with the massacre. So, Just be clear, when you're doing these comparisons to the Boston Massacre or whatever, I'm pretty sure they found them, like most of them, not guilty. And John Adams, one of our most important founders, defended them. So just to be clear, I'm not trying to say that I think that this is like that. I don't think it's at all like this. But just to be clear about your comparisons there. Okay, cool. So addressing the quote unquote steel man, I don't think that there's a base. I think it's part of your steel man is very conclusory. It's like, I felt that they were violating and I believe that they were impeding my duties. But I'm kind of just looking for the facts and circumstances that would tend to indicate that there was a triggering violation. But also, of course, if there's a violation of that statute, then the action to do is to place them under arrest. And how does doing this push accomplish that? Or how does it tailored towards, like, what is this doing with respect to the violation of 18 USC section 111? I just don't understand that.
Yep. So I'll explain that. So intimidation, right? What's intimidation?
I take
using force to cause fear in another person.
I take forcible intimidation to put one either using force or threatening the use of force to put someone in reasonable apprehension of some sort of bodily harm or offensive touching.
Right. So if I stand in front of you and I take a let's just say a posture, a hostile posture, could that be used to communicate or to try to intimidate somebody?
I'm not sure what the case law would say at that, but given how the court interpreted it in the Tincher case, I think that if you threatened to use force, and I think that you could do so with body language, and that would indicate the requisite intent there, then I think even if it's not covered, and I don't know the specific case law on this statute, I think it should be. And so I would probably argue that it would be. I just don't think I've seen any of that threatening posture that you're talking about.
Sure. But then once again, Officer McDouchebag is a fucking pussy. So that's how he's going to write it up.
No, but I want to separate the how he's going to write it up, how a court's going to hear it, how a jury's going to hear it, from what you think. As Conor, looking at this, do you think, based on what you're seeing, independent of those other ways it's being channeled, the claim is being channeled, what do you think? Do you think that there's a justifiable basis to do the push under the law?
No.
Oh, so it's therefore unreasonable, therefore unlawful. I don't understand.
No.
Okay, why is you saying that there's no justification for the push? I'm meaning legally.
Because
so
for me, and I'm not an objectively reasonable officer.
You're not objectively reasonable?
No. Are
you reasonable at all?
Yes.
Okay, so what would an objectively reasonable officer say? Would you think that an objectively reasonable officer would think that push is justified in virtue of?
I think objectively. So hold on. Now we're getting into a different conversation, but I think it's okay. Objectively reasonable officers know that this job is fraught with emotion, adrenaline, anger, resentment, lawyers, bullshit. And so as a result, objectively reasonable officers want as much latitude to execute their duties as possible because they want to judge not lest they be judged.
Wait a second, though. You're basically saying that the subjective opinions of objectively reasonable officers is to give them the most discretion possible. And that's how you're weighing the objectively reasonable officer test from the perspective of how wouldn't an officer want to get away with shit? But that's like, why would we do that? Why has the court ever instructed us to consider the officer's perspective on how their standard might influence their ability to be judged in the future? I don't know that has ever been.
No, they have. They absolutely have.
Oh,
and not just that. I would say that so for instance, I think that the interpretation of 18 USC 111 is overly narrow. So for instance, like when you use the word forcible, okay, forcible impeding or intimidation or whatever, okay, that's going to depend based off of like context and a variety of factors, which for instance, like impeding, we could look up the definition if you want to or whatever. But to me, impeding means you are preventing me from doing my job, right? You are in my way. Is that how we're understanding impeding?
I'm not sure how the courts would interpret it. I interpret impede as somehow limiting their ability to act through one of the through like culpable conduct. So the imposition can't be things that are themselves protected, right? It can't be things like recording, right? Because recording could impede, right? It could change how you want to think. It could change how you want to act. A crowd's presence might be protected. It could impede, but provided that you're within the subset of culpable conduct, which is, and that's why the forcible stuff is doing a lot of work there. I think that imposition is kind of a low bar. It's like some sort of volitional act that in its nature tends to lower the efficiency of your action, your lawful action. But again, it's presuming the lawful action, and it's presuming the sort of culpable conduct, which I don't think has been met here.
Okay, so let's say that these women are standing on the sidewalk and they're blowing their whistles and they're protesting and they're videoing or whatever.
Yeah.
And the car is in the roadway and they're on the verge of leaving. Do you think that it can be reasonably or even objectively or subjectively argued that those women are impeding a law enforcement investigation or the ability of those officers to discharge their duties?
If they're on the sidewalk?
Right. That's what I'm asking.
No, for multiple reasons.
Okay, so let's do that. Now let's say that in the conduct, let's say that they were just doing a raid. Okay, so they were tracking people down. They're looking for illegal immigrants, suspected illegal immigrants. They have specific photos that they're looking for, et cetera, for people who are known to be in the area. And let's say that those women enter the roadway in order to verbally criticize law enforcement officers, but then immediately after that, or immediately during that scenario, they spot an illegal immigrant or suspected illegal immigrant across the roadway.
And the
officer
Forrest
runs towards follow me through the hypothetical, please.
Yeah.
And then they run into this direction or whatever, and the women forcibly plant their feet and do not allow the officers through. So the officer has to run through those women in order to try to apprehend said illegal immigrant. Do you think that's forcibly impeding someone?
They haven't moved?
Haven't moved.
No.
Okay, so what would it require in order to make it forcible?
Some kind of volitional act. There's a volitional act requirement, I think, present here. But standing where you're legally allowed to be and not moving in response to something, I don't know why
Are
that
they
would
allowed to legally be in the roadway?
Sorry, I thought you were doing the sidewalk hypothetical, or do you mean the roadway?
Oh, no, I think I mentioned the roadway. So let's say the exact scenario as it is, okay, where the two women are about 6 to 8 feet away from the car. And let's say the agent spots an illegal immigrant on the other side of them, tries to run, and the women intentionally plant themselves in order to prevent the officer from doing that.
I think if they take any movement to try to intentionally plant, then I would say I think that would put you in the ambit of it, because that would demonstrate both the intent, and I think you're using force in that context, or at least you're threatening to use force to resist, impede, or whatever. But I don't think that that's true if you just stay where you already were. And I think that you would need to have more evidence of the intent to obstruct as opposed to other intents that could be plausible. But yeah, I do grant it's not like a great deal of force that you would need to have for a violation here. It could be something as simple as like putting a hand up, doing like one of these, like that could be enough. I just don't know the basis of it here. And it could be there. There could be some other evidence that shows it. I just haven't seen it yet. That makes sense? I don't think I'm being unreasonable.
No, I'm with you. I don't think you're being evasive. I think that's perfectly fine. Give me 1 second. I want to make sure that
Yeah, take your time. You want to take a break?
Not generally dictate the enforcement of voluntary agreements, train local law enforcement can identify detaining process individuals for immigration, about detainers, voluntary cooperation, voluntary. Okay. Then one of the things that you mentioned that I just want to press down on just a little bit, okay? Operating under the presumption that a law enforcement officer can, in good faith, be a witness to a crime, and even if they don't have authority to enforce said crime, let's say it's like jaywalking, as an example, which is a specific example for this one. Do we take it that in general, that a law enforcement officer can call the local municipality that is capable of enforcing said law and then act as a witness in order to enforce said law?
Act as a witness?
Witness, or even with detention authority. Let's say like an ICE officer sees like a shoplifting or a robbery.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Would they have the capacity to detain?
Perhaps as any other civilian would, but because I think that there's citizens arrests, but I'm not sure if they have federal authority to do so. Perhaps under state law they would have authority.
We should probably,
but I'm not sure. I'm not saying they don't. I'm just saying I'm not sure that that's the case.
Okay. That's sufficient for me to move forward, only because at this point, I think that if we switched around sufficient variables in order to say that, like, I know that you're saying that you don't want me to differentiate between what I would do or what I think is reasonable or whatever, or what a law enforcement officer could argue in court and get away with or whatever. But once again, I do want to argue those things.
Okay,
I will be specific about those things.
Fine.
Because I'm not trying to be a bad faith plot
perfect.
where I'm trying to argue for said law enforcement officers, because I find this behavior egregious as well. You don't need to shove a 40-year-old woman 6 feet across the sidewalk when telling her to fuck off is just as effective.
Okay,
and
yeah.
Also,
so just you can divide it. I'm not going to give you shit if you're like, this is what I think they will find. This is my personal belief about the law. Yeah, that's fine. But I do want to know your opinion about the law based on what you're seeing. Like, if it's your opinion that this is unreasonable under the law, but I think that they won't have there's no liability for it because any reasonable juror or any kind of like court that I can see, they'll be able to fuck around with the report enough, or the burden is so tough on the prosecution that even though I think this is the case, I think they won't be able to prove it. Like, that's fine.
Yeah, let me be clear and just argue exactly what I'm saying.
Okay.
So my belief is that 18 USC 111, even if it's been argued to be very narrow, where forcible is a key objective that's going to determine legality of the detention and the incarceration, and it'll result in whether or not this woman gets dismissed. The same way that local cops use when in doubt, resisting without, which is resisting without violence, which is effectively like, if somebody is fucking with you, they literally call it contempt of cop. It's a charge that you can stick them with that is so overly vague that the state attorney is going to throw it out, especially if you have bullshit evidence or whatever, but it still gives you the authority to detain and incarcerate.
No, I wouldn't grant that.
People.
I would just say that officers do that a lot. And the reason they don't fight it is because it is illegal, but there's just no remedy for it. Like, that is a problem in this country. And one of the things that happens is we have these vague statutes. And yeah, cops will use the ambiguity.
I think that this detention is immoral because this cop got angry and wants to use the color of law to fuck with these women. But separate from that...
Wait, pause. If that's the conclusion, then I think you have to grant it's unauthorized because it's a violation of the First Amendment. That's a retaliation action. You're not allowed to push someone and seize someone on the basis of protected activities. And if he's doing it based on protected activities, I think you have to grant it's illegal, if that's your view.
But that's okay. But I'm trying to differentiate personal and moral away from legality.
Well,
this is what I'm
I agree that you say it's illegal.
I
think it's illegal. Oh, sorry, immoral. But I think if you grant that he's doing this for a motive that is repugnant to the First Amendment, I think you have to grant, even just for independent, not even Fourth Amendment, for First Amendment grounds, the action's illegal. On First Amendment grounds, not even Fourth Amendment.
I'm trying to differentiate this because I think that you said something that actually makes sense.
I'll give you an example. All right, I'll give you an example.
It's illegal. You don't have to. I can say this. It's illegal in the sense that in a just society, a cop would not be able to use contempt of cop as a pretext with which to detain and incarcerate someone. However, it is legal in the process sense that what's going to happen is there's no remedy for it. They're going to detain, they're going to incarcerate, they're going to hold them, they're going to put them in front of a judge, and they're going to say, in good faith, I thought they were violating 18 USC 111, and therefore there's no remedy.
The question isn't, is there a remedy? We're analyzing like the legality of these actions as well as their morality and other things. Like, I'm not arguing that there will be a remedy. I'm not arguing anything about qualified immunity.
Do you think it's illegal for, let's say, do you think it's illegal in good faith for a cop to arrest somebody under resisting without violence and then incarcerating them and putting them in jail?
Wait, sorry. Do I think it's illegal for them to arrest someone for what? Say it again, slowly.
In good faith. Charging someone with resisting without violence as a solitary charge and then putting them in jail.
I'm not sure. I think it probably depends on the context, and I don't know that crime.
Okay,
or
it depends on the context, obviously, right?
Yeah, but I don't know the crime or its elements, and so I couldn't say.
Okay, so what I'm trying to articulate to you is that contempt of cop, or, when in doubt, resisting without, that is a cultural thing that is done in law enforcement, where if you get fucking pissy, then you can use resisting without violence as a catch-all vague statute in order to detain, arrest, incarcerate.
I don't grant that's legal.
You're saying it's illegal, but you're also saying there's no remedy.
There might be a remedy.
Right?
I'm saying I'm not sure that there is. I know that a lot of times they do that, and they don't. There is nothing happens to them. They don't get fired, or it's too vague, or they don't even care to sue the people who's being
remedy
arrested.
would be like policy changes, which is effectively
not
saying
sure.
you are prohibited from using color of law in order to make contempt of cop arrest.
I'm not
If
making
you're gonna
any
use
argument
this
about the
statute,
remedy.
You actually have to evidence and argue it
I'm
in a
not
strong
making-
way in front of a state attorney that's actually going to result in conviction. That's how you would remedy this.
I'm not making an argument about whether there is or is not a remedy. I'm arguing about the law. And my point is, if you grant, so here's an example I'll give. If someone, if this person pushed this woman in the exact same way, and it turns out that, let's say this woman is black, he later testifies under oath. I pushed her solely because she's black and I don't like black people. Obviously an illegal thing to do, right? Okay. Now, likewise, if he testifies under oath and he says, I pushed her because I was pissed that she's an anti-ICE protester, obviously illegal, right?
Yes.
You said that that's what you think is the rationale for why he's doing this. Don't you, therefore, logically have to, even regardless of whether or not they could prove it, et cetera, don't you personally think it's therefore illegal given what you think the rationale was?
This is what I don't like about this, okay? This is what I don't like about this framing, okay? So, do you personally believe it's illegal?
Yeah.
No. Okay, hold on. Let me explain. Just because, so for instance, I'm really not trying to be evasive, and I'm trying to answer you as specifically as possible, okay? So, I'll use a personal example. I'll try not to get too broad with it.
Okay.
There's a guy who deals drugs and said that he was going to kill my family in the local municipality. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens later is that he is in violation of a traffic statute. Let's say driving without a license. Okay. And I have officer's discretion in order to either cut him a ticket and give him a court date, or, I can arrest him. Okay. I would view it as punitive to arrest him. However, it's within my authority to do so. And so therefore, when you say it's illegal, no, it's not illegal. I could have shitty motivations and still follow the law. And so that's where I'm saying that they could have shitty motivations and still be trying to follow 18 USC 111.
Not if their motivation is prohibited by the Constitution.
I don't think that's true.
You don't think that there are certain motivations for government action that are prohibited by the Constitution?
I think that if you violate the law or are close enough to be believed to have violated the law, the intention of the officer doesn't matter.
That's not true, Connor. So I'll give you an example. Let's say
Why
that
is that not true?
I'll give you examples. I'll give you some examples.
If a murderer kills someone and I dislike that person and I arrest them, and I don't like them.
So
yeah, you keep saying solely, but I'm not saying solely. That's the contention that we're having right now.
Okay. If it actually is different than that, it's a significant. If it's a significant rationale at all, that's the rationale. So I'll give you an example, right? So here's an example. There's a police.
Probably agree with your example,
there's a police department. There's a police department. I'm just saying it's hard to prove these cases. These cases are very hard to prove because in a situation of a murder where you're only prosecuting the murderer, you don't really care about the murder. Whatever. And B, usually there'll be people saying, no, I wasn't motivated by the bad motive. I was motivated by the murder. And most people are gonna be like, yeah, like I'm not gonna say anything wrong. Like it was a murder, and so whatever, right? So, but just take the following example. It doesn't mean the principle's wrong. There's people speed across an intersection all the time. It's just like everyone does it. But the police department has one officer. He knows everyone in the community, and he only pulls over people who are Jewish on the basis of their Judaism. But they are speeding. Unconstitutional to stop. Or not?
I actually have no fucking idea.
Of course it is. You can't have that motivation when you're taking government action.
Well, hold on. So
change it to black.
Follow me down this, follow me down the train real quick. Not that train, the other train, the logic train.
Okay.
So the crime is proven, right? You got dash cam, you got body camera.
It's hard to prove the bad motive. It's hard to prove the bad motivation. It'll be these are cases called like US v. Armstrong cases. Very, very hard to prove. But assume that you thought, right, and you knew, you got a really good reason to think, right, or you think more likely than not that the basis of the action here was significantly motivated by hatred of Jews. That's then trivially unconstitutional. You can't have that motivation.
I mean, sure, and I'm with you in that sense. I guess I'm thinking about it procedurally, though. So
no, I know that. That's what I'm trying to say. Put that aside, Conor, because it's fucking up our inquiry. Because it cucks you, Conor. No, Conor, because you know when I isolate that factor, you've already granted an impermissible motive in your view, regardless of whether there's a remedy. You know what follows is it's an illegal push if that's your view, on your own view, and that's why you don't want to separate them because you know, given what you've already laid out, it's illegal.
No. If somebody commits a good faith, like just because you're pissed doesn't mean that the violation doesn't happen. And if the violation happens and you're fucking pissed and you take it too far, that actually has nothing to do with the underlying action. You can say
you said you thought that's why he pushed.
You can say that there's these cases where bigotry has been like the primary motivation for like stopping people. And by the way, I think I know of a couple of local cases where harassment of a person was like predicated based off of like hostility from the law enforcement department. But what ended up happening was the remedy ended up being like a civil suit that was settled. And so, but there was still no argument about whether or not the person had committed the underlying infraction, and the person still had to serve the underlying infraction.
Yeah, I'm not focusing on the remedy because I think you've granted the impermissible motive. And I'll just ask the question.
How is it illegal? Okay, so hold on. This is the crux
First Amendment is illegal.
This is the source of my frustration. No, this is the crux of my question. Let's say that it's a gentle shove. Okay, let's say that it's the perfect amount of gentle shove and the perfect amount of nice, sweet pepper spray, consensual pepper spray. Okay. And he does detain and incarcerate said person, charges them under 18 USC 111, and they say, yeah, this person fucking pissed me off, but in good faith, I believe that they were impeding or interfering or obstructing or whatever fucking lingo the statute says.
No, but now you're diluting it. No, that would be okay.
My law enforcement affairs, therefore, that's why I incarcerated them, even though I was pissed.
No, that's the pissed off aspect isn't the impermissible rationale. The impermissible rationale is, I thought what you granted, that you thought that the reason they did this was because these people are like, that they don't like ICE and they're annoying them because they're against ICE. I thought you granted that,
okay,
not
so
being pissed.
Then I'm going to ask myself a question as if I was Pisco, and then I'm going to answer said question, okay?
Okay.
Conor, how much do you think that this is knowingly believing that these people are in violation of 18 USC 111, and you can ruin their day by detaining and incarcerating them? And how much of this is you have sand in your vagina and you're fucking angry as a cop, okay? I would put it at 80-20, 90-10, that it's anger and not the violation of the law. But I'm not saying that the violation of the law completely disappears. And that's what you're trying to argue.
No.
We've been wrapped around for 20
question
fucking minutes now.
Is that 90% based on them being anti-ICE?
Yeah, and like getting in their fucking faces and being in the roadway and talking shit and all that kind of stuff.
But at least a significant part of that is their disposition towards ICE from a political perspective.
Sure, to the tune of 80-20 or 90-10. But the underlying violation still exists, and you're trying to tell me that the underlying violation doesn't exist.
I'm not saying. Well, I am saying that.
If the sole motivation is vindictiveness, then it's an illegal thing. But no, I don't think I ever said that it was the sole motivation.
I'm not saying soul. I think if there's any significant rationale.
Yeah, but you try to rhetorically back me into soul.
No, because now we're going to use the next example. If he pushed it 90% because she was Jewish, you would say that's illegal, dude. Right?
I think we fall back on provability and procedure.
Because I don't want to go there. I say assume that it's 90%. I'm pushing you because you're a Jew. Obviously, that violates the First Amendment.
That's yes. If you're committing battery against somebody because of protected characteristic, then that in and of itself is a crime.
So, on your view, where 80 to 90% of this is motivated by anger regarding the political opposition, or at least some significant part of it, I think you have to grant that, regardless of whether or not they're going to be able to prove it in court, that this is an illegal push based on the motivation.
No. I don't concede this, and I would like to move forward.
We can move forward. I don't think this is like the motivation aspect is that supremely relevant to the deadly force. I think it's part of the TOC. But keep in mind also, this cop isn't the cop who shoots. So I don't even think much of this is relevant with respect to what he's seeing, because the cop who shoots isn't seeing all this.
I think you're preempting some arguments, but that's okay. We should move into the next 3 seconds.
Pretti steps between her and the agent who'd shoved her, briefly putting his hand on the agent's waist.
Very unlikely that any officer would like see this and be like, oh my God, he's attacking this officer, right?
Sure,
Okay.
but also what does the law say? So hold on, can we actually see Pretti step between the two people and then
He's
put
getting
his
in
hands
between
wherever?
them. Oh, yeah, he's getting in between them, and he puts his
No,
in
but
his hand.
give me the video because it's important.
Waist.
Yeah.
The agent pepper sprays Pretti's face.
Rewind.
Okay.
Between
Rewind
her
further.
and the agent who'd shoved her.
Okay.
It's just over 30 seconds before the shooting when a protester is pushed to the ground. Pretti
Boom,
steps
right there. Okay, hold up, right there. Okay, can you? Is it possible for you to rewind 2 frames, or can you move 3 seconds back?
Right
Okay.
there.
Right there. That's perfect. Perfect. Okay. So, putting aside, well, not putting aside, but keeping in mind our previous positions on the topic, I'm gonna reassert my position. Okay,
Okay.
is that there is a sufficient basis, even if I, Conor, personally believe that this cop has sand in his vagina and his anger is motivating 90% of what he's doing. I think that in a court he will successfully argue that these women and arguably him were in violation of 18 USC 111 and therefore were liable for detention and arrest.
Based on what conduct?
And therefore, what's that?
Based on what conduct?
Based on surrounding the vehicle, impeding freedom of movement of the vehicle.
Which vehicle? This
impeding
is a
him if
white.
he needed to go
Is
do
that
his
their
thing,
vehicle?
et cetera,
Is that
et cetera.
white car their vehicle? Surrounding the vehicle?
No, the vehicle is to the right of the camera right now.
Oh, but
I don't know why we're backing up. We've already said that we don't agree on the underlying topics. Why are we relitigating?
Oh, I'm sorry. So you're saying they have reason to believe that she violated 18 USC 111 based on what we already saw, and that's why he pushed her?
Yeah. Because once again, you as an officer, you have the ability to disperse, especially for misdemeanors. You have the ability to disperse, or you have the ability to incarcerate. So removing these people from the, let me give you the steel man of the police summary, okay? And I don't want to hear, I don't want to hear this because you're going to argue in court, blah, blah. No, this is relevant. Because what's pissing me off, as a matter of fact, this is what's pissing me off about the conversation. You're trying to get me, but I don't matter. Nobody gives a fuck about my opinion.
I do.
What's more important, though, is what's going to happen in court. And so when you're saying that this thing is illegal, Conor's argumentation is spurious. Not only that, but Conor's argumentation agrees with me. These law enforcement officers are out of control. They're using color of law to abuse the American population. Well, then at that point, you're reinforcing the narrative that effectively, like, these people are fucking Nazis that deserve to be shot. There's like an entire slippery slope here. Whereas what I'm trying to say is that there's a proceduralism to the unfolding of these events that is logical and followable. And it's going to result in a certain result. And so if you want the world to change where you think that this is evil or immoral, then you have to come up with prescriptions that are actually going to change the situation. And defunding and abolishing ICE is not going to do a fucking dick. This happens 300,000 times a day in the United States of America. And so just defunding fucking ICE doesn't change the shit at all. And so to get fucking liberals and progressives up their own fucking ass arguing me about whether or not contempt of cop is like legal, that is like completely irrelevant to the major thrust of the conversation.
So do you think I'm trying to get, I'm just making sure that I understand what you're saying. You think that I'm contributing to a rhetoric that's trying to get cops killed or like ICE officers killed?
Unknowingly, but yeah, probably. Because you're categorizing their course of action as illegal. What do you do with people who who use authority illegally? What do we call those people? We call them tyrants, right?
Well, I don't advocate for violence. I want them to be charged, and I want there to be an investigation.
Okay, I think it's quite reasonable to infer that if you are saying that the actions underlying are illegal, and therefore these are the actions of tyrants, we have a culture in this country of what we do with tyrants, and it doesn't involve legality. And so, yes, knowingly or unknowingly, I think you're contributing to a culture that slips into this line of argumentation.
So I should not say it's illegal, and I should withhold from saying that.
No, you can, but you can just follow me down the fucking logic tree.
I'm trying to.
Okay. All right. Anyways, so let's continue down the logic tree, and I would prefer it
Okay.
If we say we disagree on 18 USC 111 and whether or
Okay.
not the cop has detention authority based off of this scenario, but we're going to operate under the assumption that this law enforcement officer thinks he can detain and arrest based off of 18 USC 111, and therefore he's taking actions that back up that belief.
Right.
Regardless of whether or not you believe it's illegal, whether or not, regardless of whether or not you think that
my perspective
he has bad motivations,
I think it's unreasonable.
He's a piece of shit.
Based so far on what I've seen, maybe there's more. I think it's unreasonable to do this push. I think this push is unreasonable and therefore illegal. So I don't just because.
Okay, do you think that a court? Do you think that there's any remedy to your accusations of illegality?
I'm not sure that you could do a Bivens action here. I'm not sure if there's an availability there.
Okay, my answer is no. I'm putting it dollars to donuts. Absolutely the fuck not. And as bitter of a pill as this is, as much as you're saying it's illegal, from a procedural standpoint, a court is going to rule with this officer 100 times out of 100. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, but that's not my claim. Isn't that there will be relief for this push? I just don't.
Okay, then I'm being a dick here, but at the same time, I think your objection is irrelevant. It's irrelevant because what you and I want is we want less Renee Goods. We want less of this guy. Okay. Yeah. So if I'm saying that this is how it's going to be argued in court based off of statutes at present, and therefore these law enforcement officers are not going to be held accountable the way that you want to hold them accountable, we can argue about the details of legality, morality, etc. And I'm happy to do it with you because I think that you're a smart guy. But the thrust of what I'm trying to get to is what resolves this. And it's not going to be perfect, but what reduces these negligent homicides.
So do you not want to have a conversation about the legality of this?
I want to put a pin in the legality of what we've already discussed, and I want to move to the legality of what we're about to discuss.
Okay.
Push to the
And
ground.
by the way, as frustrated as I am, I do enjoy these conversations.
Me too.
Like I like getting pressed. I like going into details. I'm just pissed because I feel like we're missing the forest for the trees.
I thought you wanted to talk about that. I wanted to talk about the shooting. I want to talk about the shooting.
Okay, well, let's get there.
Okay.
But we're not going to get there if we keep slowing down every 3 seconds. So let's do this.
All right. So press play.
What's simple battery?
Oh, simple battery. I think battery is an offensive touching in the common law.
Right. And so is simple battery on a law enforcement officer a chargeable crime?
I assume it is.
Okay. Now, if there's a law enforcement officer who either believes or under color of law and will not be held accountable for said action, if he's pepper spraying and pushing somebody to the ground and I walk up and I put my hands on the officer, am I guilty of a simple battery on a law enforcement officer?
I don't think so, no. Not just on those facts.
Why not?
I think a mere touching isn't offensive touching necessarily. For example, the sandwich.
If I look up
the sandwich thrower
right now, am
remember
I
the sandwich?
Find that,
remember the sandwich thrower
is a fucking violation.
Remember the sandwich thrower?
Non-consensual touching, right? Did that law enforcement officer consent to being touched?
I don't think that a battery is non-consensual touching. I thought I told you what I thought a battery was, and that's just the common law. I don't know what the federal statute would say. And I don't know if they would call it battery in the federal context. It'd probably be assault of some kind because they merge everything now to be assault in a lot of jurisdictions. I'm just telling you what I think a battery is. And I don't think
should I Google assault on a law enforcement officer federal statute right now?
Yeah, Google the sandwich thrower case because sandwich thrower indictment. That will give you the statute probably. But the sandwich thrower was acquitted, and I think the sandwich throw was an offensive touching. So I almost disagree with the jury in that case, to be clear about that. I still think it was stupid to charge him, but just to be clear, not every touching, even if you throw a fucking sandwich at someone, constitutes, they did charge him with 18 USC section 111A1. So it's the same statute.
I know, I was literally Googling that and then I was like, fuck, we're back to square one.
It's the same statute.
So hold up. Is stiff arming somebody? Is me putting my hand on someone in order to prevent them from going into
This is not a stiff arm, you
assault?
fucking liar. Why are you saying this is a stiff arm?
Why?
Come on. This is not a stiff arm.
Let's watch it from a different angle. Pull up your Twitter.
Did you DM me?
No, I haven't DM'd you shit. I'm saying pull up your Twitter and take a look at it. He puts his
Where is it?
Walking up, he puts his hand out like this. And he touches the officer and he puts his body in between the woman who was just shoved and the law enforcement officer. So is
Okay.
that impeding or assaulting based off of US C fucking 111?
It's the same law, and I think the answer to this, based on me, is no. I don't think he's doing
Okay,
this.
the answer for me is 100% yes. So, like, what do you want here? You think that you could just walk? Hold on. I just want to make sure that I'm understanding you correct, because I'm actually almost incredulous right now. So
Okay.
you think that when a law enforcement officer is conducting their duties, a federal law enforcement officer, then I can just walk up and touch them whenever the fuck I feel like it?
No, that's not my position.
So how did you not just say the same thing? Because basically, this woman is being shoved to the ground and pepper sprayed. It's reasonable to believe that she's under detention and arrest. And this man just walked up and touched a law enforcement officer who was approaching said woman. So how is he legally permitted to do so? Because you just said 18 USC, 1501 or 15 whatever the fuck 111 doesn't apply.
I'm not saying that I think that he's legally permitted to do it. So what I said is I don't think it's a crime what he did there. And just because I'm not saying that he's legally permitted to do it, but we can get into that.
How am I supposed to not infer that you're basically saying that anytime that you want to put your hands on a federal law enforcement officer, you can do so as long as you're really gentle about it? Because that's basically what you just said.
I didn't say that.
Yeah, you just said that it doesn't. You don't think it meets the threshold of 18 USC, whatever the fuck.
Yeah, but
how not?
That doesn't mean you're legally allowed to do X, Y, Z. I'm just saying I don't think it's the crime. I don't think it meets the elements of the crime. I'm not commenting on its broader legality.
Should we look at the elements of crime of assault real quick for federal?
Well, we have it. We just looked at it. It's 18 USC section 111. That's
but I don't think it's defining assault right there, right?
Yes, assault. We can actually go to the
battery.
Oh, wait,
so it's a different.
I actually looked this up in the course of doing the gun case. Whatever the sandwich thrower case was. I had some case law prepared for this, and it defined assault. I think it is with reference to the common law, but I think it does require a forcible.
I mean, I'm pulling it up right now.
Yeah. Well, no, you need to look at case law. 18 USC 111. I used to have these cases. I had them all in a place. We went through them. Fuck. This is why you should follow the stream, is because we did this already. We did the analysis back in the day. I just didn't realize it, and I didn't put it in the folder. Let's see, definition of assaults.
Yeah, this is what I pulled up. Guaro v. United States, 237, blah, blah, blah. But of course, an assault can also be committed merely by putting another person in apprehension of harm, whether or not the actor actually intends to inflict or is capable of inflicting said harm.
Right. Yeah, I don't
Proof
think
of this form of assault requires establishment of a reasonable apprehension of the immediate application of force to the victim.
Yeah, I don't think that this is putting someone in reasonable apprehension of harm or an offense of touching. Even
you think running up on a fucking cop with a gun in your pocket, which, by the way, they don't know yet. Yeah, yes. I already asterisked that statement. Okay. But you think running up on a cop while he's fucking effecting an arrest isn't going to give somebody a reasonable apprehension of harm?
I don't think that. So first of all, this is him running up. So he's not running, is he? He's stepping?
Yeah, bro.
What do you mean run?
You literally have a fucking frame there with his elbow, dude. You have an elbow check in frame.
No, is he?
And you're
running?
like, that's not a stiff arm, bro. Like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Is he running though?
Through these like 3 frames. I'll tell you which frame it is.
When is he running?
Boom, right there.
That's running. Okay, I didn't know that was running.
Okay. Well, at the same time, if you're going to do your job as a law enforcement officer and I run in front of you and I elbow check you gently, bear in mind, it is gentle. I'm not trying to mischaracterize what Mr. Pretti did. Mr. Pretti had a protective instinct to protect this woman, and he interjected himself into the scenario. But to say that, the 15 USC 18 111, whatever the fuck, saying that doesn't apply, I think is crazy pants.
So I want to be clear about now that if we were gonna invoke what you think a jury would find, I think no jury would find that this constitutes a forcible assault under 18 USC 111 for him to gently put his hand across his when they threw her down on the snow like that. Would you grant that, or do you think a jury would find that?
From what you're saying right now is that he's legally permitted to do so.
I'm not saying he's so just because it's not the crime that you specify doesn't mean he's legally allowed to do it. You understand that?
Okay, so what crime does apply? As a matter of fact, let's go ahead and move away from 111.
Legality doesn't mean crime. Legality doesn't mean crime. Legality means in accordance with the law. And I actually don't have a reason to believe it's illegal. I think that's your burden. I don't know what law you would be breaking.
Okay. How about the federal code for simple assault? How about that?
Well, I think you're going to run into the same issue there, which I don't think this is an assault.
as defined, but of course an assault can also be committed merely by putting another in apprehension of harm, whether or not the actor actually intends to inflict or is capable of inflicting said harm.
I don't think he's doing that.
I need to clarify this. Okay?
Yeah.
So in the state of Florida, we differentiate between assault and battery. And actually people using them interchangeably drives me crazy because I was drilled so hard on it so many times, okay? Assault is putting somebody in reasonable fear of injury or death or whatever. It's basically, it's almost exclusively like verbal, body language, et cetera, and it has to do with like an internal sense of fear. Okay. And so what's like interesting example, there was a guy who started bar fights all the time and people always threatened to beat his fucking ass. But whenever he got into a bar fight, they were like, hey, you know, like we could charge people with assault and battery here. And the guy says, well, number one, the battery was consensual. So therefore, I don't want you to charge the other people with battery. Number two, even when people were threatening me, I wasn't in fear at all. Therefore, the assault charge was non-void. Like assault is like an internal sense of fear in the state of Florida. And then battery, we have simple battery and aggravated battery. Simple battery is mere touching. I could walk up and if you did not want me to boop your nose with my finger, that would still be considered battery. Whereas if I wanted to do aggravated battery, there would have to be an injury. So I would need to show bruising, broken bones, lacerations,
I'm not sure how this is relevant, dude.
Okay, well, it's 100% relevant because basically if simple assault or simple battery if they've combined assault and battery into a single charge and then put people in this definition to say that the fear alone of like physical altercation is sufficient to meet the threshold of simple assault, then it's very clear that he's guilty of simple assault.
I don't think that merely touching someone constitutes assault. And so I'll give you an example, right? So let's say that you...
Yeah, but you don't think a law enforcement officer could argue that in the performance of my duties, XYZ, ABC, Joe Schmo McGlow ran up on me and elbow checked me while performing my job.
Could they argue thing is fucking up our entire analysis.
Fine, and I'm arguing it. I'm arguing that running up on a cop while they're performing their fucking lawful duties and putting an elbow into their gut is unlawful, and therefore you're liable to be detained. 100%.
What do you mean by what do you mean by running up? I just need to know what you mean by that.
Why don't you just go find the fucking video on Twitter and then play it? He's not involved in the scuffle. He's 6 to 8 feet away. He scurries over to the woman who's being knocked down, interjects him into the scenario, and elbow checks the officer.
He's right there.
Yeah, no shit. Okay, now play.
Protester is pushed to...
He takes 2 or 3 steps into the direction of the officer and elbow checks him as the officer is pursuing somebody that he just pushed to the ground.
Where's the elbow check? So hang on, let's just make sure that we know that there's no elbow check.
Rewind and play again. We could also just solve this if you just pulled up the Twitter video.
His elbow doesn't make contact. I don't see his elbow ever make contact.
Pretti steps between...
Right there, pull it up.
Where's the elbow check?
Rewind 5 seconds.
30 seconds before the shooting, when a protester...
Okay.
Keep going.
Is pushed to the ground.
So no, I don't see any contact.
Dude, there's a frame right there with his fucking elbow like this in the officer's midsection. Keep going. It's literally like a half a frame right there.
I don't know that doesn't look like it makes
just
contact.
Look at that. Enhance.
I don't think it makes contact with him.
Pisco.
I don't think it makes contact. I don't think it makes contact.
Enhance.
I can't enhance it. This is the video.
Enhance.
It doesn't look like it ever makes. It doesn't look like it makes contact.
Dude, go to Twitter. Go to Twitter and pull up a different video of pull up the pink lady's cell phone footage.
Okay. This is the Dropsite News one, right?
Dude, this is where I'm just going to accuse you. I think you're being a defense attorney for the people who are involved. That's all that's happening. I'm articulating a belief that I don't personally hold, but I think it's going to fly in court. I think you sincerely believe these things, but you're also just acting in the most charitable way possible to a side of the argument rather than evaluating it based off of the facts that are in front of your face.
I think you're trying to provoke me into getting triggered because you know you're getting mogged.
No, absolutely the fuck not. As a matter of fact, I would say that for whatever people want to argue that because I said that a cop could be pissed off and be using a statute under color of law to incarcerate someone, they could be fucking mad about that statement all you want. I think what you're saying right now is absurd. Like absurd to the point that it would be laughed out of any court in the United States of America.
What did I say that was absurd? That he didn't elbow check him? It's fucking patently absurd that you think he elbow checked him there. You can just walk up and put your hands on cops as long as you're really fucking nice about it. Yeah, because you know you can't stand on the
implication of what you're saying, regardless of whether or not you admit it or not.
stiff arm. This is just not what we're seeing. Your eyes aren't seeing this, and you're just making things up.
So pull up the other video.
I'm looking for it. I'm looking for it. Just like I looked up the statute for you, just like I looked up the case law for you. I'm also looking up
I just looked up simple assault. You just said he wasn't guilty of simple assault, even though I articulated it to you 3 times.
I don't think he is. I'm not denying your articulation of it. I think it's.
So hold on. So you think a law enforcement officer conducting his duties, okay? Let's say that he believes that he's enforcing 111. He pushes a woman to the ground. He's on the verge of approaching said woman in order to arrest her, okay? After pepper spraying her. And then a man runs up from your fucking side and then he gives you a fucking elbow to the ribs or whatever. You don't think that you can articulate that you were like in fear of battery?
I can articulate a lot of things. Assault? I can articulate that Game of Thrones exists and the dire wolves are about to eat me. Your question is fucking
this
stupid.
Is where I think you're full of shit. I think you're being a defense attorney. That's what I think you're doing right now.
I don't understand. Like your question is, could you articulate it?
The implication of your argument that behavior is not illegal implies that simple battery on a law enforcement officer is legal under federal statute, which is obviously not true.
I'm denying that this is a battery or an assault. I'm denying it under the common law.
You're dead fucking wrong. Well, okay, and it is therefore legal, right? So if I want to go down, I could. So right now, matter of fact, based off of your legal advice, which I think is horse shit, I should jump as a guy who doesn't like ICE. I should get on a fucking plane right now. I should go to Minnesota. I should find the ICE officers. And when they're trying to detain people, I should step in front of them and put my arm up because that's legal based off of what you're telling me. Because I'm allowed to impede them as long as it's not forcible. I'm allowed to do simple battery on them as long as I'm super fucking nice about it. That's the implication of what you're saying. And it's fucking retarded. It's bad. It's very dumb. It's like bad advice.
I'm not saying that you should do this. I'm not saying that it's smart to do it. I'm playing on my stream. I can't share this with you right now, but I can give you the link if you want. This is from Dropsite News. This is the angle from the woman. And we're about to watch the following sets of things. We're going to see him in the course of trying to get to the woman who was just shoved. The man, according to Conor, runs up, elbow checks / stiff arms the officer and commits assault. So let's take a look.
You need to see the video in order to point it out. Why can't you share your other screen? Or why can't you move this screen to
1 second.
your
I'll
screen?
do it. Okay, I'll do it. 1 second. Yeah, I don't see the elbow
right
check.
There.
What's the elbow check?
No, so go ahead and play it. So you think you could?
What's
okay,
the elbow
so you
check?
think that you can walk?
He's
up
grabbing
and
his elbow. What the fuck are you talking about?
Fine, there's no fucking elbow check, but at the same time, do you think you can walk up to a fucking cop, put your hand on their belly, and push them back? And that's not assault or simple battery?
Do you think touching an officer, whenever you touch an officer, it's assault?
I think whenever you touch an officer, it's simple battery in the state of Florida, 100%. And I almost guarantee you, based off of the reading of simple assault in the statute, it 100% applies.
So why wasn't the sandwich thrower convicted of assault when he threw a sandwich at an officer?
You said you disagreed with the jury.
I did, but not because I did disagree with the jury, but it's clear that just touching isn't enough as a matter of law.
Okay, so hold on. I'm telling you that in the state of Florida, simple battery and aggravated battery are 100% like settled law. And what you're saying is that assault is a broad legal distinction that combines both assault and battery. We've read the statute 3 or 4 times, which is merely by putting another in apprehension of harm, whether or not the actor intends to inflict or is capable of inflicting said harm. That sounds to me more like the assault definition.
No, but
which is effectively like
he's not putting him in reasonable apprehension of harm.
Of violence.
No, what? He's not putting the officer in reasonable apprehension of harm.
Do you think it's normal for civilians to interject themselves into law enforcement operations by stepping between law enforcement officers and putting their hands on their belly and pushing them backwards?
It said like that. I don't know if I have an opinion about that in terms of its normalcy. It sounds like you're asking.
Pisco, because it's really dumb. It's really fucking dumb. Saying that this is lawful conduct is unbelievably dumb.
I didn't say it was lawful. I said it's not criminal under 18 USC 1111.
Okay, do you want to find a crime together or do you want to move forward? Because basically what I'm arguing is based off of walking in front of an officer who's conducting their lawful duties and detaining or trying to disperse somebody under 18 USC 111 or whatever, which we don't agree on already. Then we have a gentleman who's putting himself inside the law enforcement operation and putting his fucking hands on a law enforcement's gut and trying to get between him and the fucking woman, which I already said in the state of Florida, simple battery, you can 100% be incarcerated for it.
It's so funny.
I'm going to ask you how we're going to spend our time.
Oh my God.
Are we going to spend our time finding a federal statute that does apply, or are we going to grant that at that point he's subject to detention?
I don't think he's subject to detention at that point.
I think you're fucking crazy. I think you're a crazy person.
Okay. But even, in fact, I think that this evidence is evidence against you because ultimately the question isn't whether or not the detention was lawful.
I'm going to ask you a yes or no question because I want to demonstrate
I'm being very respectful of you, and I'm not even able to like finish my thought there. So I want to finish my thought
fine.
there.
Finish your thought, but I'm going to ask you a yes or no question when you're done.
Sure, fine, yeah. So even if I granted that they had a lawful basis to initiate the detention, doesn't really change anything because even assuming that he violated 18 U.S.C. 101, the way he's doing shows he's not like doing so in a way that would cause a reasonable officer to think that he's like violent or that he is a threat to the officer. And so even putting aside the legal issue about whether or not there's reasonable suspicion or probable cause to either detain or arrest him, and again, I disagree with you on that, but even assuming that he was, the way in which he's assumedly violating the law in that context is peacefully, is a sane person, is someone who's not like about to thrash or beat up an officer. He's not doing things that are like violent the way that you and I and normal people would understand it. And so that's all evidence against you. It's him being like a relatively peaceful person, even if he is obstructing under the law, and putting a hand up right after he did this. So any officer looking at that conduct,
you already just kind of conceded. Hold on. So
I didn't concede. I said for the sake of argument
or impede. Did you just say the words obstruct or impede?
I said assuming that it was. Assuming.
Hold on. I'm conducting my lawful law enforcement duty because we could actually move past battery or move past assault, which we viciously disagree on. So let's go ahead and get into this because I think you already granted this earlier in the conversation. So if I'm conducting my lawful law enforcement duties and I believe that I have a subject that I can detain and you put yourself in the way between me and the person that I'm attempting to detain, are you impeding me?
Wait. Say it one more time. Sorry, I was fixing something on this room.
Okay. So I'm conducting lawful law enforcement duties. I am approaching someone that I have just pushed to the ground. Okay. And it is my intent to take them into my custody. You put yourself in my way while I'm trying to get into that person and we make contact. Are you impeding me from executing my law enforcement duties?
In the way you described it, it sounds like that's happening, but I don't think that makes out a definitional obstruction under 18 U.S.C. 101. And let me finish. This case is distinguishable because it doesn't appear that he's trying to detain her. It appears that he's pushing her. If he was trying to detain her, he would attempt to detain her.
Is he allowed to disperse people as well?
Assuming it's reasonable and lawful to do so. And I don't concede that because I think that it's unreasonable use of force there, as we already talked about.
Okay, so is it reasonable for a civilian? As a matter of fact, we're just going to Google forcible. That's what we have to do.
Why?
That's what we have to do in order to
Why?
do
I thought you wanted to move past the we don't need to get
moving past.
We can
shit. We don't agree on a fucking thing. We haven't agreed on a thing in 90 fucking minutes, and it's pissing me off.
But okay, assume that it was unlawful. Assume that is to say that they're forcibly impeding or whatever. How does that help you? It doesn't seem that she's trying to detain.
It would mean that they're acting under a good faith interpretation of 18 U.S.C. 111 or whatever the fuck it is, and then therefore him stepping in front and impeding said law enforcement officer from effecting the arrest, he's also guilty of 18 U.S.C. 111.
It doesn't look like they're trying to effectuate an arrest. Wait, it doesn't look like they're trying to effectuate an arrest. It looks like he pushes her.
Do you? Oh, okay. I'm sorry. If I have as a law enforcement officer, if I have the ability to differentiate between dispersion and detention, and it's my judgment as an officer to do so, and that judgment can change at any moment.
Okay.
Are you allowed to interrupt me dispersing people?
Well, he wasn't then. Then he wasn't. Then he wasn't interrupting the dispersion.
Hold on. The law enforcement officer wasn't trying to disperse people by pushing them onto the sidewalk and also pepper spraying them.
Then he's not obstructing. Then at least grant that you don't think he was obstructing a detention. If you're saying that he chose dispersion, then you have to grant that he's not obstructing a detention. Correct?
I think the second that this gentleman
can you answer the question first?
Or obstructed
can you answer the question?
To disperse. No, I'll answer this question. So let me finish this sentence and then I'll listen to your question very intently. Mm-hmm. I think the second that this guy got in front of the guy who was trying to disperse the females, he said, fuck it, you're all going to jail. And by the way, that's his right under 18 U.S.C. 111.
So when
what was your question? Go ahead.
So when was the intent formed to detain then? in your mind?
I would say probably the exact moment that this guy put his hands on the cop.
So he wasn't, by
Which
your own
changes nothing,
by your
by the
own
way.
view, on your own view, then he wasn't attempting to interfere with the detention. On your own view.
Do you think a dispersion is also a
Can
lawful
you answer
law
the
enforcement
question
action?
first? You don't think he was trying to? We can get to the dispersion aspect of it, but on your own view, you don't think that he was trying to obstruct a detention.
It's immaterial if the law enforcement officer
you
is trying to
answer
execute
it,
a
though?
dispersion or detention. And the reason why it's immaterial, and you should
Why not
already
just
know this,
answer it?
is because he's interfering or obstructing with lawful law enforcement duties. You already know that.
But, okay, but I just want to know if you
So
think
what are you doing? What are you arguing? Why are you trying to differentiate between a dispersion and a detention when it's immaterial to the point?
whether or not I think that the use of force is reasonable will bear somewhat in terms of what the goal of the officer is. And if you're granting that the push wasn't to detain, it was to disperse, I think that that's going to have some relationship to other conclusions we're drawing, including whether or not this person was trying to obstruct the detention, which I think on your view, you have to say isn't what you think he was trying to do.
Is he legally permitted to obstruct a dispersion, or does the statute apply?
I just want to know if you will even
will
will you even grant that he wasn't trying to obstruct a detention on your view?
Sure. Based off of my understanding as a law enforcement officer, it looks like the officer was attempting to disperse the females up to the shove, and then once the woman was shoved and Mr. Pretti got in the way, at that point he decided that a detention was appropriate.
Okay, but then it looks like a reasonable officer from his perspective wouldn't have the basis to think that he's obstructing the dispersion, because it looks like he's just trying to.
Why is that material to the statute?
It's material to what a reasonable officer would to look at in terms of assessing the threat.
I'm just going to ask the question over and over and over again. Is dispersing somebody a lawful law enforcement duty?
It can be, yeah.
The answer is yes.
It can be, yeah. Assuming it's
okay,
reasonable.
so the answer is yes. So if you interrupt the lawful execution of a law enforcement officer's duties, are you obstructing or impeding said law enforcement officer?
How did he interrupt the dispersion?
By walking in front of the officer as he was following up with said woman. And then also putting his hand on his stomach and pushing him backwards.
Following up to do what?
Whatever the fuck he wanted. If he wanted to decide to do a detention, then he could have done a detention.
I mean,
or if he wanted to say, hey, fuck you, stay on the sidewalk, he could have said, hey, fuck you, stay on the sidewalk.
And if he was going to shoot her in the head, what then?
Obviously not. That deals with the continuum of force. So you're just moving ahead for no fucking reason.
He was going to beat her up on the ground?
Your objection is immaterial.
Okay. I think all of this is kind of immaterial because like this isn't the cop that shot, and like who the fuck cares? Because
you were trying to differentiate 2 minutes ago about whether or not a dispersion or a detention, like was it a dispersion or was it a detention?
Well,
which is immaterial to whether or not these people violated the statute.
Because in the sort of generic hypotheticals you present, you're trying to stop them from arresting someone, and then everyone's intuition is like, of course you can't do that, but it just doesn't seem like there's indicia that that's what he was trying to do. It seems like he pushed her on the ground, and she was like, he's like, hold on, let me pick her up. She's like, whatever, and you can already see Alex like carrying the other woman off. So it seems like someone from that position wouldn't think that he's trying to like obstruct a lawful detention, especially since the officer doing the push and shove in that moment, which I think is totally fucking brutal.
Why this is immaterial though.
Okay, why?
Is a dispersion a lawful law enforcement
assuming
action?
It's reasonable.
Are you allowed to interrupt a lawful law enforcement action per the statute?
Well, assuming it's lawful.
The answer
usually
is no,
but no. Hang on. But the question isn't whether or not they were in compliance with law. The question is whether or not they did a crime, right? And that is under 18 U.S.C. 111. So
I'm saying that both of them are violative of 18 U.S.C. 111 at this point.
I mean, that's not surprising. You thought that just talking to the officers was violative of 18 U.S.C. 111. Which was insane.
No, I didn't. I said that them going up to the car in the roadway and basically screaming and talking shit from 6 feet away. And I also brought up to you earlier. By the way, this is how retarded this is, Pisco. I already told you that if they were on the fucking sidewalk, no one would give a shit and they wouldn't be in violation of 18 U.S.C. 111. So you just made up a position that I didn't even have and then try to hold me accountable to it. So that's fucking bullshit.
So wait,
fuck you for that.
So the only difference is their presence in the middle of the street. That makes it 18 U.S.C. 111. in terms of its forcefulness, and I just don't have
And
any reason to
also
think of
being
that.
around the vehicle in such a way. Dude, you already conceded earlier in the conversation that if the officer had to run in that direction and those women planted their feet,
you said
then
like
they
if
would be
she's
knowingly
jumping on
and
the,
forcibly
she's jumping
impeding said law enforcement action.
because your hypothetical is like she's jumping in front of the thing, she's like banging on it, and she's like and like very clearly
No,
using.
those aren't. You're just making things up, Pisco.
So-
That's sad. Why are you making things up?
What were the parameters of your hypothetical?
Did I say throughout the entirety of the past 2 hours, did I ever say that a woman needed to be on top of the vehicle banging on the windows in order to be considered that? I never said that. You just said that and you made that shit up.
Wait, it was
That's
like
why I'm getting angry, because you're being calm, but you're making shit up, and you're also being impossible to talk to. It's frustrating. That's why people yell at you, because you have autism.
Okay. Well, I understood the hypothetical of like someone getting in front of the car for the purpose of stopping the car from going to a place, right? So I'm adding like memes about it, but like where a reasonable officer would think that, but just but that's not the facts we have. And so I would grant that like,
what if the law enforcement officer wanted to back up? Are those women in the way? Or are they? Or does he have to take a look in order to look at the fucking females who are surrounding his vehicle in order to execute his law enforcement duties?
Actually, yeah. Anyone like it wouldn't be obstruction unless the people were intentionally trying to stop them with obstruction. Okay. Otherwise, they could be just pedestrians.
At this point, I don't want to relitigate the beginning of it, because we are in a disagreement where I can tell you that if I'm looking at the body language and actions of said cops, I think it's 90% anger, 10% the law. However, I still think that the law is the law, and these women, regardless of how it's adjudicated in court, are potentially violative of 18 USC 111, and the initiating officer who pursued those women and attempted to disperse them thought that he was doing so lawfully, or at least lawfully enough that he could execute said action.
Good thing the subjective beliefs of cop doesn't determine what the law is. I mean, that's fucking stupid. I mean, this is
sure, but you've been arguing with me about like the internal motivations of law enforcement officers for like 2 hours
to the extent that they're unconstitutional.
You're never going to get in a case. You're never going to get in a fucking case. The cop saying, "Yeah, she pissed me off. I had sand in my vagina that day. It was my fucking period. So as a result, I decided to pepper spray her and shove her."
I'm just
That's
talking
never
about
gonna fucking happen.
I'm just
So why
talking.
the fuck are we talking about it?
Because it's something you said, and I'm saying if you think that that's why they did it. And by the way, there has been a court that found that these kinds of conduct were motivated by retaliation. I'm just telling you right now, there have been courts, even in Minnesota, even in this recent deployment, that have found that ICE, for example, destroyed someone's wedding ring because of retaliation, that ICE arrested someone because of First Amendment retaliation, that ICE actually shoved someone and applied force and tear gas because of, or slash whatever the gas was, for retaliation purposes. So it's not above actually we've had findings of that effect. And in fact, the very court case that I cited.
You think that's going to be arguable in this case?
I'm not sure in this case. I'm just saying it's an entailment on your view.
I hate that whenever you ask me a question that's
yes or no. I said I'm not sure. I said I'm not sure.
Probability. No.
I said I'm not sure.
I'm going to tell you why so many motherfuckers don't like talking to you, okay? Whenever you ask me a question that's yes or no, and I have a probability that is higher than 50% or 60%, I say yes, because that's my belief or opinion. Whenever I ask you something that's in contention, but you can make a reasoned belief off of probability, you say, I don't know, or
what's
I'm
the question?
Not sure.
I'll give you my.
And so it doesn't feel like a reciprocal communication, Pisco. It feels like you want to grant no level of charity my way, but I have to endlessly fucking grant charity your way. And it fucking pisses me off.
Okay.
It pisses me the fuck off.
Ask the question again.
If I ask you and you think there's a 70% probability of something, then just say yes. Or qualify it and say, okay, 70% yes.
What's
and
your
I
question?
will be infinitely less pissed. But every time I ask you a serious question where it seems like you're in a corner and you say, I'm not sure, it pisses me off.
What's your question? Ask it again. With respect
I don't
to
even
motivation.
fucking remember my question because you're pissing me off so much.
The question was like,
so
do you think that they could argue?
Is it applicable in this case? Do you think they're going to be able to prove malice or retaliation in this case?
I don't know.
Give me a probability. 51 no, 49 yes.
I think that there will be civil action which will allege that. And I think I honestly don't have enough
probability
facts.
On the success of said civil action?
In general, low. So like 30% or lower, because it's just these are hard cases to prove. But I do think they'll argue it as part of like some sort of civil damages action that but it will have to pierce qualified immunity and then establish factual reasons for why the retaliation motivation was there, which can be tough. But again, you granted in the course of our conversation, you granted that that's what you thought it was. And so that's why I made that argument. I don't think there's anything wrong with me doing that. with saying,
Okay.
given that it's your view, surely you think it's illegal. And you were like,
Okay,
I don't know what your response to that was.
My opinion. I'm going to give my opinion. So hopefully we can move finally to the shooting.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, I'm probably just going to start giving my opinion because arguing about like court or legality or whatever, I'm just exhausted. I was not your fault, but I was exhausted before I started streaming today. So maybe that's why I'm a little bit more cantankerous than usual.
It's okay.
No, it's not your fault. I'm just a grumpy boy. So I'm under the presumption at this point that the law enforcement officer either has 18 USC 111 that could be adjudicated in court and found successfully, or he believes he has it. And not only does he have it against the female that he shoved to the ground, he has it against Mr. Pretti. And I think at this moment, he's deciding on detention because rather than I would have to track the scramble of officers, but tracking the scramble of officers, we move from telling two women to fuck off and to go onto the sidewalk to pinning said people to the ground and attempting to put handcuffs on them. So I believe that they believe that these people are under detention at this moment. That's my opinion.
Well, I think at the time that they throw hands on Alex, that he is being seized. So, and that is detention. But I don't think that just because he's being seized means it's reasonable or legal. I agree he's being seized, but I don't think that he's that means it's reasonable.
In my opinion, if the law enforcement officers were writing up a report, they would use 18 USC 111 and they would claim assault based on the first officer who pepper sprayed the woman.
And you think, just to be clear on your position, you think this person like committed that action? He assaulted.
I think it's legally defensible, yes, and I think it would be successful in court. And yes, I also think that if assault is a catch-all term for battery and assault, then an officer could easily articulate. And I'll just say,
do you believe that?
No. You know what? I'll go ahead and own it. If I'm engaged in a lawful law enforcement duty and somebody comes up and interrupts my shit, then yeah, you're going to fucking jail.
Wait, but that's not what I'm asking. The question is like, that's an assault. And if someone were to imagine a similar circumstance, right? A similar circumstance where you're like picking something up from the ground and someone approaches you in the same way that Alex did to you and does the same action of putting his hand, like you're picking up some leaves, let's say, and he goes up and puts his hand on your belly for a little bit. It's like, watch out, something happened. Like there's something on the ground. There's a danger there. That's assault. They just committed an assault on you.
No, of course not.
Why not?
Because it wouldn't be reasonable to perceive that they were attempting to impede, obstruct, or strike me in that scenario.
No, but that's circular. The question is whether or not it is assault. It's you're begging the question. The question is, would it constitute assault? And the definition of assault isn't reasonable belief of assault. The definition of assault is reasonable belief of harm. I think it might
be. I think it actually might be.
That wouldn't help you.
Hold on. Assault. Definition federal. No, hold on. I mean, that might even be a pretext that I've read to you several times.
No, it relates to reasonable belief.
Can also be merely putting another in apprehension of harm, whether or not the actor actually intends to inflict or is capable of inflicting said harm. Okay, yeah. So hold on. I'll give you the perfect scenario. Okay. So I'm a law enforcement officer and somebody furtively like approaches me. What you don't want me to be a law enforcement officer? You want me to be somebody else?
No, I want you to answer my hypothetical. Is there a reason you're not answering my hypothetical?
I was about to repeat your hypothetical. No, am I a law enforcement officer in your hypothetical, or am I a civilian in your hypothetical?
You're an off-duty law enforcement officer. You're going to pick up some leaves, and there's like some kind of thing that you're not aware of that this person is trying to warn you about or stop you from doing, or, for example, say, like, actually, those are my leaves, and I don't want you to move them or something. And so just insert whatever reason the guy has that you're not quite aware of. And in the course of trying to get you to stop doing whatever you're doing, he does the same sort of physical actions as this person who did the physical actions towards a law enforcement officer.
Yeah, if he puts me in apprehension of harm, then that's definitionally assault.
No, but you're that's begging the question. I'm asking, is that conduct?
No, that's the definition under 1610, 18 U.S.C. 351 on subsection
I'm not asking, Conor, I'm not asking if he does that. I'm asking, would, in that situation, put aside whether or not, where you're assuming, right? You're assuming that he is putting you in reasonable fear. Would that conduct in that situation that I described, would that be assault with respect to the reasonable apprehension of harm?
I've already answered this question, and I'm also getting frustrated because I don't think you're remembering what I'm saying. Do you remember my bar example? No. I'm actually going to be a little bit of a douchebag. Do you remember my bar example of the gentleman who was being assaulted?
No, not at this moment.
Okay, that's frustrating to me because I said something to you that I want you to keep in your brain going forward. So
Okay.
I want you to keep this in your brain going forward.
Okay.
There was a gentleman who was going to a bar and picking bar fights, and the locals would either beat him up or they would threaten to beat him up. And the cops kept showing up over and over and over again, and they kept saying, hey, man, based off of how often you're getting your ass beat, you could prosecute these people either for battery or you could prosecute these people for assault. But the reason why the cops could never prosecute for battery is because he said that the battery was consensual. Okay. Consensual battery is not prosecutable. You could do a fray if you wanted to, but realistically, you're going to make shit worse.
Okay.
Okay. Then you could also do assault. But the reason why they couldn't charge assault is because there's an internal component of assault, which is fear, an articulable emotion. And in 1610, assault 18 USC 351, subsection E, says merely by putting another in apprehension of harm, whether or not the actor actually intends to inflict it or is capable of inflicting said harm, does constitute assault. Simple assault.
I'm asking whether or not this factual circumstance that I laid out constitutes assault. That's what I want an answer to.
If I am in fear,
but
then
I'm not,
yes.
I'm not assuming that you're in fear. I'm asking, do the factual circumstance? I'm sorry. I'm not asking assuming that you are in reasonable fear. I'm asking.
I'm joking, but I'm extremely homophobic. If a man walks up and puts their hand on my belly, then, yeah, I might be afraid. Maybe they're trying to jerk me off or something. I don't know.
And what if they
maybe it's assault.
What if they put your hand on the shoulder? Hey, buddy, listen, those are my leaves, man. To get your attention. You
Probably
have the
not so much.
Wait, you have the headphones, you're like, nah, and you're like blowing. It's like, hey, buddy, those are my leaves. Assault?
Depends on how he grabs me. If he grabs me gently and he goes, hey, buddy.
So I think that
if he grabs me like this.
I think we have a gentle situation going on here. I think that's.
I think this is either pedantry or autism or defense lawyer brain or some shit, because I think you and I both know that they're going to be able to articulate 1610, 18 USC 351 subsection E, and or they're going to be able to articulate whatever, like 1510 subsection 111, and they'll be successful in that. And so you arguing, hey, Conor, are you personally afraid of grown men putting their hands on your bellies or your shoulder? I think it's, once again, I think it's immaterial. I think it's totally immaterial.
You want to get to the shots?
I want to get to the moments up to the shots because I want to go over the monkey fucking the football before said shots, but yes.
The monkey fucking a football before the shots? I don't know
technical
what you mean by
term.
that. What does that mean?
So can you imagine a monkey?
Yes.
Okay, now can you imagine a monkey trying to have sex with a football?
Yes.
Okay, now does his dick go into the football or does it like bounce around the football because he can't actually cram his penis into the football? Like does his erect penis like kind of just like slap around the exterior of the football?
No.
Why not?
Because I think how I view, at least my initial,
it's not a
feeling
Nerf
of
football.
sex.
It's a pigskin. It's a leather football. It's not a Nerf.
Yeah, I guess
he was not able to turn it into a homemade pocket pussy. It's actually just a leather football.
I think my definition, or how I conceive the concept of having sex with a football, like implies some sort of orifice or some kind of like hole or penetrative act.
Let's say that you know how the football is like lemon shaped or whatever, and then you have like the stitches.
Yeah.
So he's trying to make that the hole, but the football is like too tight, and so he can't insert. There's no orifice.
The monkey or this?
No,
situation?
The monkey is trying to have sex with the football, but the football doesn't have an orifice.
I'm lost. Is this like some?
So, yes, it's an absurd statement that I'm forcing you to expand upon because I need a break from serious shit.
Oh, okay. Sure.
So a monkey having sex with a football. All right. It's a hard skin football. There's stitches in it, but he can't burst his penis into it. But he has an erect penis. So he's jamming his penis into the side of the football and he's using his hands in order to try to have sex with it. But what's happening is his erect penis is bouncing off of it in every which direction because it's impossible to actually have sex with the football.
Got it.
Okay. And so therefore, when you see 6 men yanking a person in 6 different directions simultaneously, which is commonplace in arrests, especially when law enforcement officers are bad at communicating. It is akin to a monkey trying to have sex with a football because they're all trying to do something, but they're horrifically failing in said endeavor. And that's what I'm trying to communicate.
Okay, got it. So we're about to watch some like horrible misconduct is what I'm hearing. Like some irresponsible bullshit.
It's not misconduct any more than a monkey trying to have sex with a football is misconduct. It's just actually like sheer incompetence or stupidity that is actually very common.
Well, is sheer irresponsibility not misconduct?
No. Well, because basically when it comes to apprehending somebody in a 6-person scramble, that's a very difficult thing to do unless you actually practice as a team.
Okay. So let's take a look, shall we? Alrighty.
The ground. Pretti steps between
So this is the assault.
her and the agent who'd shoved her, briefly putting his hand on the agent's waist. The agent pepper sprays
That was the assault.
Pretti's face. We can see Pretti is still holding his phone in one hand, while holding his other hand up to protect himself against the spray. Contrary to statements by federal
Yeah, he's assaulting him.
officials,
He just got a face full of spray, multiple spray. Got it.
he's made no threatening movements towards agents.
So I mean, this New York Times guy's like lying, right?
No. What I would say is that we have to get into continuum of force earlier, and I asked you a question earlier, and I think you said that you weren't aware of the continuum of force. So passive, active, violent, non-lethal, and violent. Okay, are you familiar with these categories at all?
Generally, yes, but maybe not in the way that you're using them. I've seen the graph before where it shows the different, like it shows the different colors. So if that's what you're referring to, I'm familiar with that, but I wouldn't be able to give you like more of like, I don't know if I could be perfect in my recall of what is under which color.
I would like to articulate this concept because it's important for our understanding of what happens next. So passive resistance is just standing there, not moving. Okay. So for instance, if you have protesters sitting on a highway and a law enforcement officer orders them to move and they refuse to move, that's passive resistance. Okay. At that point, you can do 2 things. You can go hands-on or you can pepper spray someone. Okay. Then active is somebody's trying to pull away, meaning that let's say that you grab their arm and their elbow. The mere act of trying to draw your arm away from a law enforcement officer in order to evade being handcuffed, that's considered active. Also, even balling up and bringing all your limbs, while it's a very natural instinct, balling up and bringing all your limbs into a position of cover and ignoring lawful orders is also considered active resistance. Okay.
Okay. So now, at this point, is he actively resisting?
No, I would say he's passively resisting.
Okay. Has this cop even attempted to arrest him?
No, but he's going to.
But then how is he even resisting anything?
So this is the calculation, okay? The calculation is this guy has involved himself in the arrest, and then therefore off of that, my understanding of the statute, he's subject to detention under either 1610, 18 USC 351E, or he's liable for detention under. Yeah,
but have they attempted to initiate a detention?
They're initiating it now.
Well, then what justifies the use of pepper? Are you allowed to use pepper spray every time you want to arrest someone?
No, but the mere fact that he was pepper spraying the lady is passive because she's disobeyed lawful orders, and then this dude's committed a crime, so he can do whatever he needs to in order to gain compliance.
Why can't he shoot?
Because there's not evidence of a deadly threat at this time.
So for example, could this guy punch him in the face?
Yeah, he could go hands on. Yeah, he could shove him the same way that he shoved her.
Okay. And
it's good tactics to give a lawful command. So for instance, like as a matter of fact, it might even be required in some jurisdiction. So he would have to give like a lawful order that's disobeyed first, right? So for instance, and that could even be like a policy violation that he could be held accountable for administratively. But effectively, like what would happen is, let's say that dude walks up and hits me in the chest. This is the ideal. The ideal is hey, sir, you just committed battery on a law enforcement officer or assault on a law enforcement officer, depending on whatever. You're under arrest. Go ahead and turn around and place your hands behind your back. That's the ideal. Okay.
Yeah.
But what's happening now?
So this is, so I just be clear, this is not excessive force, correct?
I don't, if you're articulating assault, then no.
Well, I don't grant that, but they haven't even tried to. You're saying any
They haven't
assaults?
granted a lawful, they haven't given the man a lawful order, and therefore he would potentially be liable for administrative sanction. If the admin doesn't, if ICE doesn't like him.
But no, okay, but this is an objectively reasonable use of force, you're saying, under the Fourth Amendment. It's not excessive.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's because even though he's not resisting, you agree at this point he's not resisting, correct?
But he's like, the way that they would articulate it again, I would say Jesus hates a pussy. Well, I think Jesus hates a pussy. But it's like, oh, well, he walked up to me in violation of 1610, 18 USC assault or whatever. I was in imminent fear of harm. Therefore, to reduce the chances of everybody getting hurt or killed, I deployed OC pepper spray in order to gain compliance from multiple subjects that were around me.
And you would believe that?
Dude, for the sake of this, I've already tried to differentiate between what I would do and what I believe, but I think it's confusing the conversation. So I'm just going to go off of what an officer can articulate and get away with in court, because at the end of the day, like that's what we're talking about.
So your belief is whatever an officer could get away with, that's your position?
Well, for the sake of this conversation, it is now, because I try to be nuanced and I feel like it dragged us down.
Well, no, I'm just trying to ask. I agree that you're allowed to say what they would say. I thought you agreed that it would be okay for me to ask then what you would say. But now you're saying that it's not okay.
What I would say is I was a cop for 4 years. I never used OC pepper spray.
But do you think it's an objectively reasonable and not excessive force?
I think, yeah.
Okay.
We can see Pretti is still holding his phone in one hand, while holding his other hand up to protect himself against the spray.
And this other spray is justified in virtue of what?
Gaining compliance.
But he's already sprayed him.
What's that?
He's already sprayed him, right?
Did you just unironically pause like a second and a half after and say, why is he still spraying?
Yeah.
Okay. We've been over the action-reaction gap. I'm not going to do it again.
Contrary to statements by federal officials, he's made no threatening movements towards agents.
And at this point, they're trying to arrest him, and that's the lawful basis.
Correct. They're forcing him to the ground and attempt to detain him. Yes.
Okay.
Pretti, who had a firearms permit, carries a gun holstered on his right hip, but he doesn't reach for it, and it appears agents are.
So at this point, there's distance between them, right?
Yeah.
Unaware the gun. And
he sprays again. This is after the second spray that I said. He's continuing to spray.
Are they surrendering? Are they gaining compliance?
Well, I don't know how you could tell, because they've been sprayed. Are you saying that they should have just like not moved at all and just stopped where they are after getting a face full of pepper spray?
I don't think it's reasonable to expect them to do so, but yeah, I think that. So let's talk about ideal versus actual. Okay. The same way, and I've already said this in my own chat and my own coverage or whatever, is that we give law enforcement a broad degree of deference and latitude when it comes to split-second decisions in the heat of the moment, which is going to cover a lot of what we're talking about in the next 10 seconds of video, okay? I think that reasonable officers, and I'm not saying objectively reasonable, I'm saying overly reasonable. As a matter of fact, I'm going to go ahead and say I'm an overly reasonable and unreasonable man, depending on the topic. Okay, I'm about above average for reasonable. When you're getting pepper sprayed in the face, your instinct is not to, immediately go, oh, okay, you got me. I'm going to surrender now. I'm going to put my hands up.
Yeah,
your
so why is he
instinct
spraying
is to
again?
scream and to cry and to put your hands over your face.
Right. So why is he continuing to spray then?
Because he's going to say in his report that they didn't immediately comply to lawful orders. Therefore, I continue to spray in order to gain compliance.
But you're saying you could not
or
reasonably
to make compliance more easy for apprehending officers immediately afterwards.
But they're not acting in an uncompliant manner right now. They just sprayed them in the face.
Okay, what did I tell you about passive resistance and active resistance?
That they're different, and that one involves, if you're just like standing still, it's passive. If you're in the middle of the highway, it's passive.
Well, I mean, you don't have to be in the middle of the highway, but yeah, if you... Okay, bye. Sorry, 1 second. I opened up my chat.
What'd I do?
It's not you.
Oh.
Somebody else. Don't worry about it. I was coming back to check and see if my chat was being soy, and some people are being soy in good faith, and some people are being soy in bad faith. So
because there's the initial spray, right? There's the initial spray. He has it out, spray,
but he doesn't.
And then he grabs his arm to spray him again, and you're like, oh, action, distinction. Then he can spray, backs up, takes a moment,
unaware,
and then sprays again. And so, like, what's the basis of that spray?
Okay, because when you're at passive and active resistance, okay. Do you think that Mr. Alex and this lady, do you think that they could reasonably believe that they're under detention right now?
They could believe it, or would they? What do you want to ask?
I would say, is it reasonable to believe that they're under detention right now?
Not yet, no.
Why not?
Because detention usually involves a seizure of some kind with the intent to make them sort of be detained. And there are many instances in which a reasonable person would not feel that their freedom of movement is restricted just because they're applying like aerosol things. And in fact, you distinguish between them, disbursement from. And so I don't think that everyone who is sprayed.
But I know that. I don't think a lot of civilians know that.
Wait, you think that just being sprayed makes it you detained?
I think it's reasonable to believe that you're probably on the cusp of being detained.
Well, then he's not under the reasonable belief that he's detained yet. If it just means that on the cusp.
Okay, let me just articulate the ideal and then we can move on. Okay. So the ideal would be put your hands up. You're under arrest.
Yeah.
That would be the ideal. Okay. And then if those people put their hands up, we're done. No more pepper spray, no more beating, no more nothing, because you can secure their arms, put their arms behind the back, put their hands behind their back, wrap them up in handcuffs and walk them out, right? Whereas if they're going, and you're saying, put your hands up, you're under arrest. Even if you and I can agree that that's unreasonable to expect pepper sprayed people to behave rationally immediately under lawful commands, it's still going to be considered passive or active resistance.
So they're resisting right now. What are they resisting?
They would be potentially resisting detention, particularly if they're receiving lawful orders.
But we don't hear any lawful orders, and we have the audio.
Correct. And as a result, if the cops did not give lawful orders, but pepper sprayed them anyways, or tried to grab them anyways, then what's going to happen is they would be liable for an administrative sanction if it was argued in front of that they violated policy by not giving lawful orders to people that they continued to beat. But there's also going to be a reasonability here. Yeah. And the reasonability is going to go back to the civilian, where effectively it's like, I'm just going to say it. If a cop walks up and pepper sprays me in the face, I'm going to assume that I'm being detained because a cop is walking up and pepper spraying me in the face. If you want to say that in the heat of the moment, it's not reasonable for or it could be a dispersion. Therefore, maybe I could just start walking away. Well, at that point, yeah, sure, maybe. But there's going to be a little bit of heat of the moment deference that's paid to the people. After an extended period, there's going to be a moment at which they're going to say it's no longer reasonable to believe that you're free to go.
Okay, got it. At this point, how would these people act? What would they have to do to not resist these two people?
Throw their hands up, throw their hands up, and basically stop moving.
Okay, you think that is reasonable to expect them to do? And anything?
No, but I'm not talking about legal reasonability. I'm talking about like human reasonability. When you're pepper sprayed in the face, I don't think it's reasonable to instinctively just throw your hands up in the air.
Okay, so then therefore, by that logic, right? Assume that they saw the gun at this point. They're spraying. It's a guy who, in your mind, is resisting.
Why are you presuming that they've seen the gun?
I'm just trying to test your principle and your principle, right? I'm testing. Is that okay to do, or do you not want me to ask this question?
No, go ahead. Go ahead. Okay. I don't care.
So, assume, for the sake of this hypothetical, that they saw a gun at this point after they sprayed him. It would be your belief that an armed person with a gun is actively resisting the officers.
Yeah.
Okay. And so why wouldn't be allowed to shoot him?
You might be. Depends on whether or not that hand goes near that gun.
Assume it doesn't.
Then I don't think that would be objectively reasonable.
So it's not enough for an armed person to resist officers to know that it's justified to shoot them, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And is even there.
Okay. At this point, I think it's reasonable to believe that you're being seized. Okay.
That's great. If we're 2 seconds apart and now you think it's reasonable to believe that they're being seized, then that's fine.
Okay. Now I'm going
As a
to
matter of fact, you know what? That's fucking great. I'm happy we can finally agree on something.
Yeah, I'm not hiding the ball. I'm just giving you my opinion. What I'm going to be looking for though is the wrestling, because you agree we haven't seen any wrestling yet, correct?
Correct.
He reaches toward the protester,
And is this wrestling? Him trying to get this woman up?
I don't think so.
apparently trying to help
All right.
her up, while agents begin grabbing him from behind.
At this point, the officers are pinning him down to the ground, correct? And I think this is
Well,
the
I don't think he's down on the ground yet,
Well, he's
and
about
this
to
is
be.
where we're going to get into wrestling. So one of the things that was pissing me off that was kind of soy is that losing a fight that's 6 versus 1 doesn't somehow grant you carte blanche to do whatever the fuck you want. Okay?
Agreed, yeah.
So ideally, in this situation, okay, if you want to say there's no, and by the way, I'm going to say this again, even though nobody's going to hear me say it. I'm going to say it again. Okay. If we are granting officers broad latitude during heat of the moment scenarios, then officers need to grant civilians the same level of grace in heat of the moment scenarios. And you cannot expect that pepper spraying and beating the fuck out of somebody is going to result in them instantaneously going, oh, I just surrender. I surrender. I surrender.
I appreciate
now that's
that,
going to happen. I'm going to do that because I don't want to get fucking shot, but I'm a former law enforcement officer. So I have a lot of knowledge about how these scenarios are evaluated from a law enforcement use of force perspective, but I don't think it's reasonable to expect a layperson with no legal background, no law enforcement background, no use of force background, no force background whatsoever. I don't think it's reasonable to expect them to do that.
Right now, they're in agony. You think that's a fair characterization?
Yes.
Okay. So these people who are in agony, who have just been sprayed and are being forced on the hard pavement, you would apply some grace to them. Fair?
Yes.
Okay.
He tries to pull away.
And this pulling away thing, that could be an action to give him relief for his agony, right? But it's not clear that they're...
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
But, okay, if the narrator, I'm presuming the narrator is referring to Mr. Pretti. Okay, I'm presuming.
Yeah.
And so at that point, we've moved from passive to active at this point. And at active, not only can you do hands-on, not only can you fight, you can also do pepper spray and you can do taser. Now, I don't even know if ICE has tasers, but the point is that we're moving our way up the force continuum, and this is evolving in a matter of seconds.
Okay.
And again, he makes no threatening movements towards the agents.
You would agree with that characterization?
From a lay definition, yes.
Is there a more technical definition?
Resisting arrest by itself could be viewed as a red flag or yellow flag for intent. Okay. But I agree that based off of from a lay perspective, the body language of this guy, evaluating this as somebody who doesn't have that much autism, it does not look like his intent is to harm the officers.
And a reasonable officer would see that.
Maybe.
In virtue of what would they not see it? Maybe perhaps because the officer's not looking at him. The officer's going to shoot, you'll see, isn't going to be looking at him. Okay. And that's a big problem for you, isn't it, Connor?
Hold on. No. But I need you and I need the audience to hear this. Moving up the force continuum from interjecting yourself into the scenario to being passive to resisting actively, like drawing in and firing a weapon takes like less than a second for trained shooters or whatever. So that is where moving up the continuum of force is going to be a yellow flag or red flag. So I can say that based off of body language and his actions, I believe that this is a man trying to defend a woman who doesn't have ill intent towards law enforcement. That doesn't mean that other law enforcement officers are evaluating it the same way, or that my read on body language could be held as objectively reasonable.
Got it. And but you would agree at this point, what matters is what the officer who shoots perceives, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
But agents pull him backwards and force him to the ground. Then shots ring out.
The breakdown for this is going to be insanely important.
Things down so each moment is clear. Here is Pretti. Several agents are restraining him, and this is the Border Patrol agent who will shoot him first.
So he's not even looking at him, right?
Yeah, he's attempting to assist with the detention of the female.
Right. So to the extent that he's resisting in the ways that we're describing, he's not perceiving it, right? So he can't take it into account. Agreed?
Sure. I don't yet. Let's just say yes for now, and I'll object if I need to. He can still hear a scuffle behind him. He can still like if he hears, I surrender, I surrender, I surrender, I surrender. That's obviously going to be contextually evaluated separately.
The guy has a face.
Like, obviously, right?
Yeah, but the guy could be screaming because, I don't know, he has a fucking face full of bear mace or whatever the fuck they use.
Which doesn't tell you whether or not he's actively or passively resisting. You don't understand. People with a face full of bear mace can and do pull and fire guns, right?
I agree that they could and do, but the question is what the basis is for this officer to make a conclusion that this man is a qualifying threat. But you can't take into account things he didn't perceive. Agreed? Or at least things he wouldn't have any awareness of. Yeah. Okay.
Sure, but the thing that I'm objecting to is you're saying zero awareness. I'm saying 8% awareness, 10% awareness.
I mean, is aware that they're
due to hearing.
He must be aware that they're effectuating an arrest. But he's not aware of like what's happening there. And so your whole thing about wrestle, the right to wrestle, that was stupid to post that, right? Because I mean, even from this,
no, it's not at all. And I think you just don't understand what words mean. So I'm sorry. So hold on. If I'm wrestling somebody to the ground and I'm winning and I'm pinning them to the ground, but they're 90% pinned, but they're resisting me, are we still wrestling?
Well, I'm just
like at what point during a Greco-Roman wrestling match, like sufficiently before the pin, because the pin is the end of the match, right? At what point does a Greco-Roman wrestling match no longer become wrestling?
Well, I'm just saying, I'm not granting that he's resisting at all.
You should, just based off of the concept of passive and active resistance.
Yeah, so like I think that actions that are kind of involuntary and where there's at least a rationale related to dealing with agony, that resistance sort of implies some sort of volitional, intentional opposition to certain conduct. And I have no reason to believe that a reasonable officer would think that.
Let's plug that into the police calculator real quick. So this guy's in agony. So he's not resisting.
I don't have a basis to believe that this constitutes resistance as I understand it.
Wait. So hold on. So if he's in agony and he's not resisting, what can I do to him?
I
like
think
based off of the use of force continuum.
No, I think that you're allowed to if you.
The answer is I can do nothing.
Well, hang on.
Therefore, your conceptualization is flawed.
Hang on. No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that in this particular case, I'm not sure that he's trying to resist. Unless you're saying
but I think that you're using resist in a lay term and I'm using it in a technical term. You're saying that he doesn't have the intent to resist. Well, I'm saying based off of the use of force continuum, he's engaged in passive and active resistance.
What's the definition of passive resistance or active resistance?
Active is like pulling away.
All right, let's just say active resistance.
I would type in like passive, active, violent, non-deadly, and violent.
Let's take a look at this one from Cambridge Dictionary. This can't be right. We have to go with like a police one because the Cambridge one I think isn't correct. Because I think you'll reject it. The use of actions, sometimes including violence, to show that you oppose something. I'm sure that's not right for this context. So police definition. Use of force. Why don't we do in Minnesota? I know it'll probably be like federal or whatever. It's whatever the fucking policy is. Active. This is the definition from stpaul.gov. I don't fucking know what this is, but this is at least one from some police thing. The person's verbal or physical actions intended to prevent an officer from placing them in custody and rendering the situation safe, but are not directed at harming the officer. Examples include walking or running away, breaking the officer's grip, spitting. But intent is there, but we can go to a different definition as well. City of Bloomington. Let's see. Active resistance. A response to police efforts to bring a person into custody or control for detainment or arrest. A subject engages in active resistance when engaging in physical actions or verbal behavior reflecting an intention to make it more difficult for officers to achieve actual physical control. That has an intent component in it. Let's see.
Yeah, but hold on. That's an or thing. I wasn't even paying attention to what you were saying.
Oh.
You're saying, and once again, this doesn't make any fucking sense whatsoever, Pisco. Once again, I swear to God, you have fucking autism, okay? So hold on. If you're saying that there's an intent component to resistance, okay, that's what you just said to me.
What an officer would perceive, yeah.
Okay, so there's an intent component to resistance. Let's just presume that for a second. And let's say that I'm not only a reasonable officer, I'm a above average reasonable officer. And so I believe that this guy just got pepper sprayed in the face, and therefore he needs a few seconds in order to take a bat so I can arrest him or whatever. That might be true. But am I going to take a pause?
No, I'm just trying to see.
To not grab his arm
or his elbow?
No,
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying your characterization of this as resistance isn't something I'm necessarily going to grant. So I'll give you an example. Let's say that you pistol whip a kid to arrest him, and let's say for whatever reason that's reasonable to do, and the kid starts crying. Oh, it hurts so bad, and you're trying to arrest it. Like when he starts crying and gripping his head and moving around because it's so much pain, would you consider that active resistance?
If he's pulling away from the officer, then it would fall into the definition you very much just read.
Okay.
Matter of fact, go ahead and read the one that you just read from Bloomington.
From Bloomington, let's see. Bloomington. Bloomington Police Department. Active resistance. A response to police efforts to bring a person into custody or control for detainment or arrest. A subject engages in active resistance when engaging in physical actions or verbal behaviors reflecting an intention to make it more difficult for officers to achieve actual physical control. So to make it more difficult.
You understand? You understand that we just did like the clausal argument earlier in this conversation, and then you said that a single adjective was translated by the Eighth Circuit in order to apply to all terms therein. The term forcible. And yet what's going on here is that there's a clause, and then there's or, and then you're applying intention to the totality of the sentence.
No, hang on. So
yes, you are. So and also, it makes no fucking sense. So if somebody doesn't have the ability, so if somebody is engaged in active resistance but don't have the intention to, and then I translate to mean that they're not resisting. If they're not resisting, then I can't do anything to them. It makes no fucking sense.
Well, no, just because someone is not actively resisting doesn't mean you can't arrest them.
Hold on. So if passive, just standing there, okay? The dude is passive. I pepper spray the guy, but he just stands there, okay? Am I allowed to go hands-on?
I'm not sure. It depends on whether it's reasonable in the context. I'm not sure. It depends. That's the answer.
Okay,
I don't know why you're pissed at that.
Yes.
In every case?
The answer is yes. So the point is, like, you don't use force against people who are compliant. And yet you're saying that they can't use force in order to affect the arrest because the person is in agony, and because they're in agony, they don't have sufficient intent in order to actually resist.
Well, no,
it's like a self-defeating logic chain. It doesn't make any fucking sense.
I'm not saying that resistance is a precondition to doing an arrest. Did you hear me say that? I just don't think that they're necessarily resisting.
No, but I think once again, it's a matter of implication. So if this gentleman is not resisting at all, then at that point, why are the officers doing fucking anything?
Well, so presumably to effectuate an arrest, they're trying to arrest him, but I don't think that.
Okay, so why are they going hands on? Why are they? Are you allowed to grab somebody's arm or punch them in the face?
Well, yeah,
are you allowed to punch somebody in the face when they don't have the intent to resist?
I think all of this is excessive force because they haven't shown that this entire time. I think that this is basically they forced a situation, and this is all excessive force, and none of this is reasonable and none of it's lawful. That's my view. But I'm just in your fantasy world where this makes sense.
This isn't my fantasy world, and this is what pisses me off about this. I'm telling you that the intent does not determine. Like, so for instance, do you think a type 1 diabetic has the intent to commit battery against people? Like if they're hypo or hyperglycemic and they start hitting people or whatever, do you think they have the intent to do so?
Yeah.
What? Have you ever met somebody who's type 1 diabetic? What the fuck are you talking about? You think a type 1 diabetic wants to be violent and wants to fight people?
I think that we would, it's within their conscious object to do it. As we understand it.
They barely have a conscious object.
Okay, well,
they're barely there. They're effectively like they're just fight or flight on steroids, right? Like there's no entity to reason with. There's no entity to create intent.
Then I didn't know that. I mean, like, if you're really telling me that aliens control someone's body, then no, they wouldn't have the intent.
Okay, well, that's sufficient enough of an example for me that I no longer want to argue it. I want to move on. Because the thing about it is, you're saying that based off of your reading and understanding of the use of force doctrine of multiple localities, you believe that in order for police to use certain levels of force, there has to be an intent. And therefore, if the intent is not present, then you believe that it's excessive force because you believe all of this is excessive force.
No.
Whereas what I'm saying is, intent is not a requisite part of the use of force continuum. And therefore, these actions are justified.
I didn't say that you need to show that there needs to be some sort of showing of intent before use is reasonable.
Then what the fuck are we talking about?
I am sort of not conceding that he is in fact resisting, because I think resistance, regardless of whether the force is reasonable, I think that resistance implies intentionality, a purpose.
Okay, we disagree, and I would like to move forward.
Okay, good. But this officer right now is not seeing what you're characterizing as resistance just yet.
This appears
I would characterize, once again, I would state that if you turtle, if you bring your arms in, if somebody grabs your wrist or elbow and you drag it away, that is contextualized as active resistance, and you can tase somebody, pepper spray somebody, you can hit somebody, you can do all of that shit.
And if
that's what I'm stating.
Let's say that his leg were amputated and they're trying to arrest him, and he was like, ah! He'd be like resistance because he's like rolling around and his fucking stump leg.
I'm telling you, if he wasn't responding to verbal commands, you could 100% tase that guy.
No, that's not the question. Are they resisting?
For the sake of our conversation, in a lay definition, no. In a technical definition, when deciding what levels of continuum of force you're authorized to use, yes.
Okay.
Be when agents first
all right, so he's still not looking at him.
that Pretti is carrying a firearm and yell.
For the first time, he looks over.
Pretti has
and by the way, they'll do a close-up of the shooting officer.
gun. Watching the same moment from a different angle, the agent who first peppered...
We can pause. We can hear. And they typed out, so I'm assuming we agree with it.
Yeah.
He's got a gun, he's got a gun, he's got a gun, he's got a gun.
Yes.
Okay. We can let it flow from there.
And to be clear, what you would do in this context, being hit with cans and after being sprayed, you would be sort of lying down still, correct?
The ideal is that you surrender.
I'm asking what you would do in this situation. Would you be lying down still?
Yeah, no, dude. If I'm getting arrested, I'm starfishing, bro. I'm starfishing, and that's what I'm doing.
Okay.
Because I don't like getting shot, and I don't like getting my ass beat.
Sprayed Pretti, beats him several times.
So as the original officer pepper sprayed him, he's now hitting him with the pepper spray bottle, and this is justified because
it would be considered passive or active resistance, so striking would still be considered good.
Okay. What if you had a hammer?
No.
Soup can?
No.
But tear gas canister, yes.
I mean, it's substantially lighter, so yes.
times with the spray canister. We can see that both of Pretty's arms are
Also,
pinned
hold
down.
up. Pause. What'd you say? Soup can? What was the other thing you said? Hammer?
Mhm.
Hammer would be imminent threat of death or great bodily harm because you could break a rib. I think a soup can would be as well. If this dude is hitting him in like the ribs or whatever, I don't think a pepper spray can is going to be any more damaging than a punch. So, and you're allowed to punch at passive.
Got it.
By his head. This agent in gray reaches to remove Pretty's weapon from his hip. As this agent...
I mean, it looks like he's looking right at it.
Okay, so let's break that down because that's obviously going to be the object in contention. The weaker argumentation, in my opinion, which was brought up by Grid 1 Motorsports, but I still think it's possible, is that the alarm of someone screaming, he's got a gun, he's got a gun, he's got a gun, he's got a gun. In this context, many people, mostly boomers, mostly people over the age of 40, they carry two firearms. So they carry a semi-automatic typically at the waist level, and they'll carry like an ankle pistol as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
So even if one firearm is secured, that doesn't mean that all the firearms are secured. Now, if I had to bet dollars to donuts, because I actually think that's the weaker of the two arguments, if I had to bet dollars to donuts, I think this officer probably has tunnel vision and was unaware that the pistol was being seized. So I would chalk it up to the chaos of the fight.
And that's what an objectively reasonable officer...
The firearm is being seized.
And so he is being objectively reasonable in this, correct?
Presuming that
for
he
tunnel
doesn't
vision.
see the disarm.
Because he's tunnel visioned.
Yes. Okay. Unholsters his gun, nudges the agent in gray out of the way, and fires. Let's rewind and focus on the agent who shoots first. Just seconds before he fired, he was facing away from Pretti and focusing on an entirely different situation as he tries to spray a nearby woman with an irritant.
And what would be justifying this spray? Attempted spray?
Passive or active resistance.
To what?
The subject is being detained.
Which subject is being detained?
Is she standing there?
Yeah, she's there. But which subject is being detained?
Is this the second woman, or is this the woman on the ground?
There's another woman picking up the second woman. The woman who was initially pushed, she's attempting to pick her up. And I'm asking, what is justifying this spray? Do you think this is reasonable to attempt to spray in this context?
If they have the intent to arrest all three, and they're basically like helping her get away, and that subject is under detention, then yeah, I think you could go hands-on, and I think you could pepper spray.
Even this woman? I mean, this woman, they're going to arrest her for what?
I'm going to try to explain this really quick because I think this is actually, hopefully this is illustrative. Okay. Yeah, I have a friend. He goes to a bar. Okay. There's a gentleman there who he wants to arrest because he was committing assault or something. Okay. Hold on. Much better. Okay. So, and the guy says, fuck you. You know, I do what I want. I'm not going to be arrested. Eat a dick, cops. And he starts walking out of the bar. Well, what happens is the cops follow him out to the street, but so does the entire bar, which is dozens of people. Okay. And so during the scuffle, what ends up happening is there's only two cops there. So they can only arrest so many people. So they grab the guy, they throw him down on the ground, they start fighting him, wrestling him, because he said that he was going to his car to get a gun. Well, what ends up happening is the people who are onlookers effectively start walking towards and charging. Well, maybe not charging, but they start walking towards the officers as if what they're going to do is they are going to peel the officers off of the man who's being arrested. Okay. Now, some of them might have had that intent. I'm sure some of them didn't. They just wanted to get closer to the action and take a look. Mm-hmm. But what ended up happening was, in order to disperse the crowd, the officer, believing that he was trying to effectuate a lawful arrest and that these people approaching him were going to make that arrest more difficult, he pulled out his OC spray and sprayed the crowd. So at that point, do you think that he has to evaluate the requisite intent of every single person on scene in order to determine whether or not that spray is justified? Or can he justify the spray within the context of, I'm trying to effectuate an arrest and this person is making it more difficult to do so?
Yeah, on those facts, I think it would probably be more reasonable given the overall threat of the crowd if he's perceiving that. And it seems like in your hypothetical, that is what he's perceiving. But I just think that's a very different circumstance than what we have presented here.
Well, and then we also disagree that in the beginning of this case or whatever, 18 USC 111 or whatever the fuck it was.
Yes, we also disagree on that.
That these people would be subject to either detention or dispersion. So if this officer wanted to disperse her, he could hit her with spray. If this officer wanted to detain her, he could hit her with spray. Either way.
She's not like, I guess she's technically like a knee on the side of the road or something. Kind of unclear.
Well, she's also involving herself in the scuffle because she's picking up somebody that they intend to detain.
Well, I don't know. Where is that intention? Have they said, hey, she's under arrest, don't touch her? What have they tried to do? It seems like they can just go right to using the spray again against this woman. But this woman, Conor, she's already been sprayed.
And
why is it reasonable to spray her again? She's on the floor.
You gain compliance.
How much more to gain compliance? She's doing what any other person would do, having been sprayed, and spraying her more is not going to cause her to be more still. It's going to cause her to be more in agony, right?
Can you show me the policy where you're only allowed to spray once?
I didn't say that.
Okay, I think that's what you're implying. Either way, it's immaterial to the shoot, so we should probably move to the shoot.
Can I just linger here for one more question? I mean, so like, do you think that spraying her again is more likely to get her and more compliant?
No, but like I said, I'm a simultaneously overly reasonable and today an unreasonable former law enforcement officer, and I never used OC spray because I think OC spray is, in general, it's a. So
then why would it be reasonable now?
No, hold on. Let me say this because this is not an objectively reasonable officer. Okay, an objectively reasonable officer is going to say, I'm allowed to use OC spray at passive resistance, therefore I can use OC whenever I want to at passive. Okay. What I'm saying is that the only time that I've seen OC be effective is I've seen it be effective against dogs, where dogs run away. And because you're not trying to affect the detention on a dog. I've seen it effective for dispersion, where you're trying to get people to run away because they don't want to be hit with OC spray, or they're hit with OC spray and they no longer want to be there. And then I've seen it make arrests worse, where OC spray, when you're going hands-on or whatever, people spray the subject, but because it's an aerosol spray, it gets into everybody's eyes, everybody's ears, everybody. So the cops are now coughing up OC spray. And so as a result, I elected as an overly reasonable officer to never use it. But that doesn't mean that other officers aren't objectively reasonable in their use of spray at passive or active resistance to effectuate an arrest. I'm not changing policy.
But at this point, I feel like she's been sufficiently sprayed, and spraying her has no tendency to increase the lawful purpose of what you're characterizing as compliance in the face of passive/active resistance. Like, it just really does seem
that officer makes a different judgment, and he says it's actually easier to fight people who are OC pepper sprayed and get them to maintain compliance once they've been exposed to OC. Maybe they have a different opinion. And I'm telling you that an objective, reasonable standard is going to back that officer up more than it's going to back me up.
So when would it be unjustified to continue spraying? What's the, once she basically like stops moving?
Yeah, when they surrender.
Okay, but spraying her.
Have you ever seen, it's bad tactics, by the way, but have you ever seen a video of an officer striking a subject with a baton? And what's happening is he keeps hitting them over and over and over and over again. It says, stop resisting, stop resisting, stop resisting, stop resisting. And what happens is for 45 minutes, somebody is getting their ass beat with a fucking baton.
Yeah, what do you think about Rodney King? What do you think of
directly analogous? I promise you. I promise you it's directly analogous. Okay, so you're hitting them with the fucking baton, but what they're doing is they're in so much pain, they don't want to surrender, they want to defend themselves. So what they do is they do like a Brazilian jiu-jitsu, like spin move, where they keep trying to keep their legs towards the officer because they don't want to be hit in the head and arms. And so what ends up happening, because cops don't understand body mechanics, they're poorly trained to some degree, and they don't have good hands-on stuff, you effectively see like a ass beating with a baton for 45 seconds. Whereas if they said, hey, fucking go into the position, like lay flat down or lay flat on your fucking stomach, put your hands behind your back immediately, and then threaten to hit them, that would have gained compliance more quickly than them continually hitting the person for 45 seconds. Have you seen those videos? Because I've seen those videos.
Well, I know about Rodney King, and that seems somewhat similar fact pattern.
Well, he was high on PCP, so that's a little bit different.
But you think that was justified to beat Rodney King in that context?
No.
In virtue of what? It seems like on all fours.
By virtue of gaining compliance. Hold on. Now we're getting into a nuanced topic that is actually like prescriptive. Okay? Because none of this is the best way to gain compliance. Hands-on, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, grappling, Greco-Roman wrestling, restraints that don't involve strikes are 1,000 times better at gaining compliance from subjects than any of this shit. And yet law enforcement officers are not sufficiently trained in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Greco-Roman wrestling, or restraint techniques. So while all of this is legal, it's bad. And I think that officers should completely be retrained in the reference to the way that they use force. When I'm telling you the use of force continuum and what officers are allowed to do in this situation, I'm being descriptive. If you ask me for a prescriptive, I have about a 10,000 word thesis paper for you.
Okay. But you are saying that this is objectively reasonable use of force under Supreme Court
standards? Based off of the current standards for the use of force, this is a legally defensible use of force.
Which means it's objectively reasonable, right? Because that's the standard.
Yes.
Okay.
The spray appears to malfunction, and the agent turns as he adjusts it. That's when someone yells that Pretti has a gun. In around 5 seconds after fully turning his attention toward Pretti, the agent draws his weapon and shoots. His arm visibly recoils at the first shot. The firearm has clearly been removed from the scrum when the first shots are fired toward Pretti at close range. The officer who disarmed Pretti can be seen reacting to the sound of the first shot, looking back toward the skirmish. The shooter was standing behind Pretti and not under direct threat.
You'd agree with that.
Contradicting statements from Homeland Security officials that he fired defensive shots.
Hold on. Pause. You already know this. I don't even know why I have to articulate it. I feel like you could articulate it yourself. Does the officer standing behind Mr. Pretti, does he need to be in imminent threat of death or great bodily harm?
No.
Okay. So can you steel man what he believed that he was doing in order to end the threat? Who do you think he was protecting in that scenario? Assuming he didn't see the disarm.
Are you asking what I think actually happened or what they might argue?
Well, I mean, if you say that you think that he just used this excuse in order to commit murder, I think
that's
you're
exactly
a crazy
what I think happened.
Oh, okay. I think you're a crazy person, but that's fine.
Why wouldn't I think that?
Why do you think he would
intentionally kill a person?
So you're saying that this guy saw
psychos?
somebody resisting arrest, then he heard the phrase gun, 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 but he already saw the disarm and he shot him in the back for fun. Well, even though he knows that could result in criminal charges for him and the incarceration for him for the rest of his life.
Just to be clear, that's what I think actually happened, but it's not what's necessary to show murder. You wouldn't need to believe that that's the case to show murder, just to be clear. But I do think that's what happened.
Okay, so what would you need to show in order to show murder?
That he intended to kill this person / was practically certain the death would result, that he acted with malice aforethought, and that there's no justification. That's what you need to show. And all the elements are proved regardless.
What's the malice aforethought?
Malice is a term, from the common law, means bad heart. It can be accomplished through intent or knowledge, meaning conscious object or practical certainty. And someone who shoots a gun at another person a total of 10 times is practically certain the death will result. And there's no other sort of exception that takes you out of intentional, from malice into not malice, except for perhaps imperfect self-defense. But like I said, I don't think that he has access to that because I don't think he thought his life was in any danger.
Okay, so this guy is effectively like a serial killer. He's using.
I think he's a murderer.
He's using law enforcement as a pretext to look for opportunities to commit murder, and he found one, so he took it.
That's what I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you would need
but it's not
way
it's not
more.
it's not necessary.
That.
It's not necessary to a finding of murder. I just want to be clear about my opinion about his additional bad intent isn't necessary to a finding of a murder. And I think I just made that clear.
No, you did. I just think you're fucking crazy pants, and I think that his assertion, his defensible assertion, is going to be way fucking easier. Like dollars to fucking donuts. Once again, I would throw like $100 down that this guy doesn't even get charged.
I'm not saying he will be charged. This is just what we're seeing.
Okay, so what I would say is infinitely more likely is number one. And by the way, I could run you through the entirety of the police report when we're done with this, and I actually would like the opportunity to do so.
Which police report? The
one that
you would
write.
make. Okay. Yeah, we can do that.
So what I think is infinitely more likely is that he's going to put in his, he's going to say, I didn't see the fucking gun. As a matter of fact, in the scramble, I had tunnel vision. I had no idea the gentleman had been disarmed. And so as a result, when I heard the officers screaming, gun, 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 he's got a gun, I thought that the scream was indicative of an imminent threat of death or great bodily harm to myself or others, because obviously, as we know, a pistol by itself is a threat of death or great bodily harm, and its imminence is as quickly as you're able to point it and pull the trigger. So, hearing the panicked screams of a fellow officer yelling, gun, 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 I reasonably believed that the subject was not only resisting arrest, not only engaged in passive and active resistance, I thought he was in the process of retrieving a weapon that posed an imminent threat of death or great bodily harm to myself and others, and therefore I discharged my service pistol into his back, killing him, in my belief, ending the imminent threat of death or great bodily harm.
Well, not
and
just
I think that's exactly how it's going to be written up, and I think that he's not going to be charged.
Oh, I thought you were going to wait till the end to do your fucking police report, but not just
Dude,
in the
that's
back.
not even a police report. That's like a 3-second summary.
Not just in the back. How are you going to justify the shots when the guy's lying prone and they magged up into him like full seconds later?
We can take a look at that, but once again, you dismissively have characterized the 3-second window or whatever as like the 3-second get out of jail free card fucking window or whatever.
Zone. Yeah, you're
appeal to that.
Yeah, so you believe in the 2-3 second fun zone. I mean, I don't even know why you would stop there, given what you have to say about the mace, but we can continue.
Has a vantage point to see the gun pulled from the scene, but it's unclear if he did and whether he thought a weapon was still on Pretti. He then fires 3 more shots from behind Pretti.
Hold on, we gotta pause real quick. Hold on. Crazy Cat Gamer says, so you can shoot someone just because someone else shouted gun without seeing anything or assessing anything. Pisco, can you answer that question?
Well, I don't think that's a per se rule. The answer is no.
Okay. Are you aware of case law where law enforcement officers used force based off of the perceptions of other officers?
I'm not aware of specific cases where it was all that. I mean, there are certainly some cases, even cases like Plumhoff or whatever, where they're getting information from other people, and that would absolutely factor into the TOC. But I think what your audience member is suggesting, though, is that it can't be enough merely to say gun, gun, gun to make something reasonable, because that certainly would be horrible.
But they're going to add in the TOC. They're going to add in interjecting himself into the arrest. They're going to add in subject to arrest under assault or interfering with law enforcement operation. They're going to add in passive and active resistance. They're going to add in resisting the other officers who are attempting to fuck the metaphorical football. And then they're going to add in the imminent threat of death or great bodily harm. And as a result, it's going to be justified.
Okay. I disagree.
Whose arms are down as he appears to brace himself against the pavement. In one hand, he still holds his phone, and in his other, his glasses. The agent in gray who removed Pretti's gun carries it across the street. Pretti is disarmed and falling to the ground. But the agent who first pepper sprayed Pretti and later beat him with a canister also pulls out his gun. From a distance, despite the fact that Pretti is lying motionless on the ground.
He's prone. He has 4 shots in him.
Okay. You can be shot in the heart and you have 20 seconds until you're actually dead.
These 2 agents fire 6 more shots. Neither is under threat.
Action and action distinction? Or sorry, the action and action time period?
Action-reaction gap, relatively speaking. Maybe the other person actually is a serial killer and just wanted vacation because they wanted to go on administrative leave for participating in a shooting. I mean, you could use that as a talking point going forward, is that if you're involved in a shooting, then you're on administrative leave for extended periods. So not me, because I don't just assume that like police officers are running around looking for an opportunity to murder members of the public. But if you want to argue that Officer 1 did see the gun, he just wanted to get away with murder, so he killed him. And then if you want to argue that Officer 2 just wanted like 6 months of paid administrative vacation, then you could argue that if you wanted to.
It's not necessary to anything. I mean, it is my belief for that first officer. That is my actual belief. And I answered your question. And now what you're doing is bad faith, as though that were necessary for a finding of murder. As though it were necessary for the elements that we're talking about.
I didn't say it was necessary for finding a murder. I said maybe that was his motivation. I said maybe his motivation is he wanted a vacation.
By focusing on that, you are being bad faith because you are now taking, the belief that I do have about his intent.
Ass, to be clear, I don't know about bad faith.
I think it's bad faith because you know that's the conclusion of justification.
I'm not forwarding an argument that I disbelieve. I'm giving you an argument that you could use if you wanted to be rude to another person during a different debate.
Well, I think that these cops, at a bare minimum, are fucking incompetent, and I think it's ridiculous, Conor, that you would justify any of these shots, let alone the shots as they're backing up, as this dying man is lying prone, his hands outstretched, seconds after continuing to shoot 6 shots is unconscionable. It's disgusting.
What's the times elapsed? What's the total time elapsed from first shot fired to last shot fired?
It's a few seconds. But it's not half a second, Conor. I mean,
okay, but we've already talked about action reaction gap, and we already talked about how what was it? So it was a quarter second in order to recognize something was going on, and it was like an average of a second and a half in order to take an action.
That's something you got from that's something you got from like ChatGPT or something. That's not what I said. No, I didn't agree with that. I disagreed with that.
So you think that everybody can stop their actions after a quarter of a second? So realistically, they just wanted to mag dump a corpse.
I mean, one of the guys initiates this action, so it's not stopping what he's doing; it's starting. So how are you going to justify that one? Because that's not going to be explained.
Because you shoot until the threat is over, Pisco. Okay. You've already heard this a dozen times.
Yeah, but
not only have you heard this dozens of times, you've heard this hundreds of thousands of times.
He's lying prone.
And what did I say to you? What did I say to you about somebody who got shot in the heart? What did I say to you? I want to see if you retain an iota of the information that I communicate to you.
Yeah, it takes 20 seconds for them to fully die out or whatever. But the difference is here.
There are documented cases. Okay. Hold on. There's a variety of ways that you can cause bodily or you can cause death in another person. Number one, you can do a central nervous system shot, and that's deemed instantaneous. If you interrupt somebody's central nervous system by hitting them in the top of the brainstem, they effectively can no longer control their body because they're shot there, okay? The other 2 ways that you kill somebody is inducing shock or insanguination, okay? Exsanguination takes time. That's where you rip apart the blood system so badly that their blood leaves their body, and as a result, they die. That shit can take fucking minutes, okay? You could shoot somebody, like I said, in the heart. They can be hit in the heart, and they can continue to operate for another 20 seconds. So it would have been reason. So just be clear.
Wait, because you know where I'm about to go with that, right?
No, I don't.
If they kept firing for 20 seconds, would it be justified? If they kept firing for 20 seconds, would it be justified? Yes or no?
If they're trying to induce shock, absolutely. And I would like the opportunity to finish the concept.
Sure.
So I already articulated to you a central nervous system hit. I already articulated to you exsanguination. The final way is to induce shock. The way that you induce shock is by overwhelming the body with injury, and then the brain shuts down automatically. Okay? So that's the third way. So if they're trying to induce shock because they still think that he's moving, then yes, a 5 to 6 second gap in order to mag dump to induce shock
20 seconds.
is how you stop a threat.
Are you
20 seconds?
Are you coming back from 20 seconds? You said 20.
No, I mean, I thought you said that it was a matter of seconds.
No. Would it be justified for them to continue shooting 20 seconds? You answered yes.
No.
Okay. Why not?
As a matter of fact, I brought up to you the Laquan McDonald case out of Chicago, in which the officer took aimed shots for 20 seconds.
Wait, so do you think that's justified in this case? If they kept firing, reloaded and kept firing for 20 seconds, why would that be unjustified on your view?
Because effectively they've already induced shock. They've already induced shock probably with 3 rounds, let alone 6. But if 10 rounds are discharged over the course of 6 seconds, then it's not that big of a deal. That's like pretty normal.
Okay. I think I don't know, man. I'm kind of exhausted. What about you?
Me too. So let me share my prescriptions with you. That way your fucking audience isn't totally fucking soyed the fuck out.
Okay.
Oh, I'm gonna share a screen. Can I share a screen with
sure.
you?
Let me just one sec.
Okay. What I would say is, over the course of the past several hours, and I knew it was going to be messy and I knew it was going to be ugly, but I would say that what Pisco and I really did is we disagreed about description. I think you disagreed on description from a legalistic perspective based off of your training and education as a lawyer. I think that I argued my descriptive understanding based off of my training and experience as a law enforcement officer. And for those of you who don't know, law enforcement officers and lawyers are not famous for getting along. So it's not surprising that we didn't see eye to eye on a healthy chunk of the topic. However, I do think the reason why I like Pisco, despite me maybe calling him a CUNT and also banning his chatters from my community and all that kind of stuff, despite all that ugliness and all that descriptive rigmarole, I think the one thing that I actually like Pisco for, and I think he intends well for the Republic of the United States. I think he genuinely does care about the Constitution of the United States. I think he genuinely does care about democracy. I think he genuinely does care about the Republic, and he's fighting for it rhetorically in the best way he knows how, and I respect that, and I like that. So, as a sign of good faith that I'm not just this meat-headed murdering piece of shit who just loves it whenever cops mag dump random human beings, I want to share prescriptions that I've come up with that I think would actually save American lives based off of recent incidents, including Renee Good and including Mr. Pretti. So I am appreciative of Pisco indulging me in said sharing.
Got it.
So I'm sharing a document that I wrote up, reducing police homicides in the United States. Okay. If I could extract case law from the Renee Good shooting and or write new legislation, I would say that the Renee Good case law needs to define officer cause jeopardy and prohibit officers from knowingly, maliciously, or negligently provoking a use of force scenario resulting in death or injury of a member of the public. If they are found to have caused officer cause jeopardy, then I believe that they should be held liable for a civil suit and fired from the profession. I would argue that more progressive and liberal people argue that they should also be held to criminal account, but I don't agree with that. Although I do think that that would reduce unjust homicides. In reference to the Pretti case, I would say the belief that a gun was present led to the death of an unarmed man, and as a result, law enforcement communication in a fight needs to be codified and trained for. The simple yell of the word gun, 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 gun should be identified as an imminent threat of death or great bodily harm, whereas if an officer shouts disarmed, then that should be codified, in my opinion, and notify fellow officers that they have seen a weapon on scene but have secured said weapon. Then, American law enforcement can still rely on imminent threat of death or great bodily harm as a guidance for when they can use lethal force. However, cops should be retrained in reference to edged weapons like knives, improvised weapons like baseball bats and golf clubs, and screwdrivers and homemade appliances. And we should adopt European-style disarmament tactics to save more human lives. Cops should be equipped with and trained with riot shields, tasers, bolo nets, capture devices to reduce deaths, particularly of people experiencing drug overdoses, excited delirium, schizophrenia, and uncontrolled diabetes. I got two more and then I'm done, I promise. All cops have to be trained on the signs of drug overdoses and positional asphyxia to reduce in-custody deaths. Chokeholds and neck restraints should be moved to the deadly force category, and they should be otherwise restricted from use. Do you disagree with anything? You got any feedback on those?
I think that some of this stuff makes sense from the perspective of, like, you know, disarmed and like having certain codes of conduct, but I don't think we need new laws to establish the crimes that occurred here. And so I think that some of this stuff, you know, I don't have an expertise in what makes sense in a law enforcement capacity with respect to like the certain best practices. But I will say, I'll put you guys full screen again, that we don't need new frameworks to deal with what happened in these two cases. I think they're both murders, and I think they should be charged as such from the state's perspective. And I think additional reforms need to be aimed with respect to personnel. I think there's a personnel problem in ICE, specifically in CBP, and we need a clean house and we need to abolish it. So those are my views. I think maybe some of the things make strategic sense.
Don't worry, I'll watch the Live and Learn episode and get triggered and yell at my computer tomorrow.
Oh, we didn't really. That was like more about like the lefty. Like we have another repetition of like the lefty.
I know. I'm very excited about that component of the debate. I can't wait.
But that has nothing to do with like
20 minutes on abolish ICE and 20 minutes on is Hassan Piker bad. I can't wait for it. That's my favorite kind of content.
But like the abolish ICE part was, I don't think is as spicy as the part about Hassan bad. But yeah, see what you like. Conor, I think you need to back away from this position. I think it's a bad position. I think it's indefensible. I think maybe you want to defend cops, and I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt of that, but I really do think it's like monstrous, some of the stuff you're arguing for, and I'm not trying to like soy out about it, but I hope you reconsider. I really do, because I do like you and I like talking to you, and I appreciate that, you're taking a stance, an iconoclastic stance among members of your community, but I do think it's monstrous. But I'm sure we'll have future conversations about that, but you made me tired.
We are what no, I'm tired too. I was tired before I started streaming. So what I want people to realize is that we are temperamentally different. We do believe different things. And so we can agree that the Republic of the United States is good, that the Constitution is good, that the Bill of Rights is good, and MAGA is largely threatening the structures of our republic, and that could basically cause a time of unseen before turmoil and anarchy and death and misery, and therefore those people should not be encouraged. And I think that's where a lot of the heat is coming from, is because they view me talking about use of force the way that I do as excusing Noam and Trump of accusing this guy of domestic terrorism. I actually have a breakdown of Mr. Pretti's position that effectively valorizes him as an incredibly well-intended patriot of the United States, exercising his First Amendment and Second Amendment rights. But because of the way that use of force doctrine is, written in the United States at present, he's effectively like a martyr, like he's a dead martyr in the name of these rights. Now, I think he made mistakes, but also as a civilian, I don't expect him to know about those mistakes. And I also think the officers made mistakes that
one of the mistakes was resisting, right? One of the mistakes was resisting after the pepper spray. I would say
having a pistol on your person and involving yourself. Morally, I applaud him. Seeing a woman get thrown 6 feet and saying, I don't care if I'm armed, I don't care if that's a law enforcement officer, I'm going to step in and intervene and protect this woman from additional harm or whatever. That's a noble, virtuous constitution. I think Mr. Pretti is a noble, virtuous human being, but the graveyard is filled with plenty of noble and virtuous human beings. And that's what I'm trying to communicate when I'm talking about use of force or whatever, is effectively like, we could talk about this another day, but I don't want your and Stephen and other people's noble pursuit of justice to encourage people either towards stochastic violence and or putting themselves in harm's way in a way that's going to get themselves hurt or killed.
No, but I always say that, and I want to be clear, guys. Peaceful protest is sufficient, and that's all we need to do right now. I don't want you guys to do crazy things or criminal things or attacks, because it will only serve to lower the chance of getting justice, because I don't want Renee Good or Alex Pretti to have died in vain. And I think that does mean charging these people. And I think any situation in which we are doing cowardly or criminal acts lowers the chance of getting real justice there. So I agree with that.
Well, and if I was capable, which I don't think I am, but if I was capable of taking the energy and the passion that you and other advocates have, and then proposing the law enforcement reforms that I brought up with, the modification to use of force in reference to like edged weapons, the out of police homicides that are probably like 2,000 homicides a year from law enforcement or whatever, I would say you could probably cut it by half, because I almost guarantee you that what's happening now is imminent threat of death or great bodily harm. It's an improvised weapon like a baseball bat, golf club, screwdriver, edge shears, whatever. And instead of getting a bunch of cops to kind of corner this individual, use riot shields and non-lethal means to gain compliance. They instead just mag dump the guy. And so I'm telling you, like, out of 2,000 people who are killed by law enforcement every year, we could probably cut that in half if we adopted some of these policies. But these policies, unfortunately, are not popular enough for anybody to give a shit.
Well, appreciate the conversation, Conor. We'll see
Soon.
what happens, and
let's take a break. Let's reset. I'm going to go do some aftercare, and then we'll spar in another few weeks, I'm sure.
Awesome. See you later, man.
Bye, buddy.